But we figured out a way to answer all of the questions in one. It's a principle.
You won't like it.
No, if you understand the principle, it helps answer a lot of the other questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're probably going to do is we'll just wait for everyone to get out of the toilet first, and we won't start it. You know those ladders must be empty, otherwise concentration is not possible.
Yes, we clapped. We did the sacred clapping.
Yeah.
We want to see if those shoes can dance without bare feet.
You haven't seen Mary tap dance, have you?
Yes.
You're not going to see it either. She can though.
I can. I loved being a tap dancer.
Okay, just wait. Yeah.
Is it the last?
No, one more.
One more.
Two more to go. Yep. This is the thing about having a small number of toilets you see in a venue.
Yes.
You got to wait for everybody. Yeah.
Where in Queensland do you guys live?
Where in Queensland do we live? We live about 220 kilometres northwest of Brisbane. Yeah.
Which is the capital of Queensland.
Which is the capital of Queensland.
Queensland sort of. That's the state of Queensland.
It's a lot bigger than that. Yeah.
That's the east coast of Australia. Brisbane is here, and then we live about here.
Yeah.
The Sunshine Coast is here. And
It's a farming community, but it's quite dry though. Yeah, quite dry. In fact, 1 year just recently, we only had 170 millimetres of rain for the entire year.
That was a very dry year.
Very dry year. But on the average, we get about 450 to 600 millimetres of rain. Yep. We have to collect our own water. We don't like you guys who rely on lakes around or whatever to pump water. And also
we have dams, but
we do have dams.
Yeah.
But also for us, you know how you have bores and things like that, like wells and bores and things like that. Well, the water table in Australia is getting very low, and so a lot of around where we are, farmers have been using bores and wells for many years, but they're all drying up. So, and that's going to happen in a lot of places around the world. Actually, it's already happening in the US in some places where they've got aquifers drying up, underground aquifers drying up altogether. And at the moment, I think there's around 50% of the world's aquifers are drying up and not getting replenished at the rate they're getting used. So in Australia, we have to collect our own water from the rain, and when you only have that amount of rain, you're going to have a fairly large roof space and quite a few tanks to collect the water. Mm. So yeah, we have sort of more problems with water than probably anything else. Live on the driest continent in the world, obviously.
But around us is peanut farming, like grain farming, as well as cattle farming. Yeah.
So are those tiers that you're building, are they rice?
Sorry,
the terraces? No, it's all native stuff we're putting in there.
All native.
Yeah. All native, native seeds and stuff.
Yeah, we bought around 1,000 varieties of seeds from all sorts of sources, and we planted them. And Yeah.
If you go on
You'll see.
Godsway.net, you'll see
You'll see.
pictures. Yeah.
If you look at terrace project or regen projects, yeah, you'll see what. In a lot of the places that we've regen, there's like the whole area has been cattle farmed for such a long time, and it was an old horse farming property when we bought it, and it's on one area, on this very slopey area, nothing had grown at all, no grass or anything for 12 years. Yeah.
And now it's got trees.
And now it's got trees, like big trees, around 6 metres, 8 metres high already, after a few years, you know. And what was happening was the water was running off so fast that the water would run over the surface. It was all clay surface. So it just run over the surface and not even touch the soil, really. Rip off all the topsoil. All the topsoil ended up down the bottom of a gully. And the gullies were like, 6 metres to 8 metres deep.
In the corner of the property.
Of erosion gullies. And all the topsoil down there, so no topsoil. And so nothing was growing at all, no life at all. We dug, to create the terrace, we dug down, in some places 2.4 metres to create the terraces. And in that entire time we never saw a worm, an insect or an ant or anything. In this whole hill.
When we were out there seeding, we'd get up really early in the morning and a team of volunteers would go up and we had lots of different experiments with how to seed them and stuff, but I'd play a game with you guys of like spot the live thing, and now you go up there and it's just teeming with insects and little birds and snakes and possums and all kinds of things. So.
And the terraces have created a little microclimate as well, because the terraces have a bank. The way we design them is they have a bank and then a flat area, and then they come down the hill. So the slope is like that, but the terraces go like that, straight, and then a bank, and then down. And the bank is around 1.5 metres high. So what that's done in the terrace was that when it's very, very hot days, like 40-degree plus days, the terraces themselves, when you go in them, stay about 26 degrees or thereabouts.
That's lovely.
And the reason why is because there's an inversion layer that's created by the cool air getting stored at the bottom of the terrace. And so for the first 1.5 metres, for about that deep or so, it's a cool layer of air that's all over the ground. So when it's 40 plus, there's this cool layer of air, and so things are just going nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, we're very interested in soil health, and a lot of problems in Australia with baking soil because the temperature gets so hot and there's nothing covering the ground. So we did a lot of work to cover the ground, and then having those banks keeps everything cool, and so a lot of microorganisms kicked off, which is great.
We did some experiments about bare dirt versus covered ground in terms of temperature of the soil. And in Australia, what's happening with our soil when it's bare, it gets in the middle of summer, it gets up to around 80 degrees in temperature, Celsius in the soil. And so nothing can live in that, right? And nothing can live in that for the first, quite a deep layer. And when you put when you get something growing on there, the soil goes down to about 28 degrees. It's a huge difference. Yeah. So you know how in farms in Australia, they generally, when they farm, when they cultivate, they clear everything. And the problem with that is that the soil now is going to be at a very high temperature for a long period of time, and so the microorganisms and everything all try to get deeper, but that's out of the growing layer of the soil. So there's all sorts of problems happening in Australia because of all those problems. Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about spirit tank.
Okie dokie. So, we've rubbed it all.
Yep.
So there's no question. Start from scratch. And a lot of your questions actually revolve around how does rapport work between people who live on Earth and people who live in the spirit world. How do you have a level of rapport where you feel like you're communicating with somebody?
What draws you together?
What draws you together? What draws you into a state where you're listening to another person? Now, it's exactly the same things that create rapport between people on earth. So let's look at the issue of rapport. In this case, we're going to be looking at, firstly, I want you to think about, when you have a friend on earth, what creates the rapport? What creates the, what you call the relationship? Yeah? So we must start.
With Adrian here.
Adrian here. Over this side. Yeah.
Similar interests and
Okay, so similar interests. Yep.
They agree with my facade and my demands.
So there has to be some level of agreement
Yes.
between you. Yeah. Yeah.
They agree with how I want to feel about myself.
Well, not always, do they? Like people on Earth often don't even know how you want to feel about yourself.
Right.
Do they? So it's
But
not.
you could say maybe they meet an addiction.
They meet.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yes, you're right.
And so yes, addiction often creates rapport, doesn't it? Where I have an addiction to be superior, and you have an addiction to be inferior. So now we get along. But if as soon as you are feeling like you're equal to me, I don't like you anymore. That kind of thing. Right? So a lot of times it's about establishing also a power relationship, isn't it, with people? It's either one person feels more powerful than the other, and so therefore, and the person who feels inferior feels attracted to the person more powerful because it makes them feel better about themselves, pleasing the person who's more powerful. So you could call all of that addiction. That's all. And addictions are all sins, by the way, the whole lot of them are sins. So you could say what draws people together is sin. Draws people together a lot, doesn't it?
Yes.
I like to sin in the way I like to sin, and you like to sin in the way you like to sin. And if there's some kind of agreement between our sins, that doesn't mean you have to have the same sin. There just has to be an agreement between our sins. So another example of that is, let's say Mary likes to sin by pleasing a man, and I like to sin by expecting a woman to please a man. Now we get along. But if I don't like to sin by expecting a woman to please a man, and she wants to please a man, I'll be annoyed with her.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because I'll go, what are you doing? You don't need to please me. You don't need to look after me, right? And she'll be going, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Now there's a disagreement, right? So you can see the sin or the addiction of the person often draws them together, creates a rapport between the persons. Now here we're not talking about a good rapport. We're just talking about rapport, which can be good, can be mischievous, can be malicious. It can be joking, it can be not jokes at all. Very serious, can't it? It can be either, right? But it just depends. There has to be some level of agreement in terms of what we expect from each other. Yeah. So Kevin here, and up the back to there. So keep moving, groups.
I was thinking like body language and eye contact.
Well, what are body language and eye contact really?
They can be addictions. Or
Yeah, but how would we define them? Aren't they more how the person feels emotionally that's getting expressed unconsciously?
sure, okay.
Aren't they?
Fair
It's
enough.
like, I feel a certain thing and my body language will show me. So let's say I feel timid.
Yeah.
So my body language will show you that I feel timid.
Yeah.
And if you feel like I can take advantage of a timid person, then you'll be attracted to that timidity in me.
Correct.
And I'll go, yeah, I'll let you. I feel like I'll let you, take advantage of that.
Or if you're open and welcoming, or whatever it is.
Okay, so if
Yeah.
someone's welcoming and you're going, oh, they're lovely, even if they're not, and they might be welcoming you into a sin, den,
Yep. Yeah.
a den of vice, and they go, welcome, and you go, wow, great. I'm here. Do you know what I mean? Very big. So a lot of times they can be welcoming, but in a very dark way towards darkness, can't they? And if you feel, oh, they're making me feel welcome, then you might go,
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, there's sort of a welcoming attitude, and again, not always in harmony with love or anything.
We go back there, yep, but over here first. So just keep your hand up.
I was going to say like a shared trauma or shared injuries, somebody that
Okay.
can really empathize with you on a
Yep, they
deep
get
level.
my pain,
Yeah,
I get what they've been through.
kind of like the opposite of the addiction because it's not. You're not.
Is it the opposite of
Well, I
addiction?
mean, I guess it kind of is addiction because
It
you're
is
feeding
an
each other's addictions,
It's
but
totally addictive.
It's a massive addiction,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally addictive.
It's commiseration often,
Yeah,
yeah.
empathy. Obviously, empathy and shared trauma, not always the same thing. Commiseration, not the same thing as empathy. Is it 2 S's?
Yeah.
My spellers out there. Commiseration. You know, where I'm basically going, oh, you feel, you poor thing, you know, you've had all this terrible experience. I feel, you know, you could say a facade of compassion, because it's not real. But, okay, we're up to
Yes, over here, yep.
Yep.
proximity.
Proximity, very good, yes. What's that?
Being close.
Being close to
In
someone.
physical location. Or familial rapport.
Proximity, not proximity.
IMITY.
Sorry?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. So
And proximity
can
can
be
physically as
physical.
well as familial proximity.
Yeah, it can be physical, can't it? But it can also be emotional, can't it? And it can also be spiritual, can't it? And it can also be sexual, can't it? Yeah. Okay. Yes, where were we next? Was it Michael's? Yep, down here. Oh, sorry, up the back. Yep. And then we'll come down.
Just to add to proximity, like cultural sort of.
Cultural, yes, which is really emotional, but yes.
But it's sort of like, isn't it, like, oh, this person's had kids, or this person hasn't, or this person has Asian parents and this person, does, and
Yeah.
so there's all these things
They're
that
from the
we,
same country as me.
Yes.
They're from the same family as me. They're from the same, seemingly.
religion,
Yeah.
these kind of shared
Yeah.
experiences. Yeah.
The reality is none of you are from a country, hey? Yeah.
All right, Mike.
Isn't that true? You're not Canadian. But God created your soul in a soul space that actually is nowhere near the earth. So you could say you're space aliens, really. But you're not Canadian, you just happen to arrive in this particular location on this particular earth, right? Yeah, but it's funny how we identify as such, isn't it? Yeah.
Common background, experience, or history.
Common background, yes. So this is
A lot of
all
these are
proximity,
similar,
isn't
aren't
it?
they? Yeah.
This is all proximity, so we could add to that background, and what was the other one, Michael? Whoops.
History.
History,
History and experience.
yeah,
All very similar. Aren't they?
history,
It's funny how
experience,
a lot of our relationships are governed by this proximity thing, aren't
yeah, education.
they? Not a lot governed by the very first thing that Adrian said, which is about similar passions.
All right, there's a whole area of things that you're missing out so far that guide your relationships. So let's see how we go. Yep.
Values and beliefs.
So yeah, let's call them, shall we, moral values? Right? Which is really, morality is a sub-aspect of truth. So morality is God's truth. What is God's truth? And when I say values, what we're saying is what measure of God's truth do I have compared to what you have? So if I have the idea that it's fine to take responsibility for other people's lives even when they could be doing it for themselves. Let's say I have that value. That doesn't mean it's God's value, does it? It just means it's mine. So here we're not talking about God's moral values, we're talking about personal values, which are not always moral. Yeah.
And the other comment was beliefs, which is really what
Beliefs?
you're talking about as well.
Now, beliefs can also be formed in all these different areas, can't they? So physical, emotional, spiritual and sexual areas where we have beliefs. And that certainly does create an attraction. So that's why, you know, if we're going to go to church, well, if I'm a Christian, I go to a Christian church. I won't go to a Muslim mosque, right? Because they don't have the same beliefs as I. And so I want to change, you know, if I have to change my beliefs to go there. So I don't want to do that, so I don't. Right up. Over here. And then April as well. Straight behind.
Passions and desires?
So passions and desires, yes. So what do we mean by that? So what are the things I like to do? What are the things that like make me feel alive? You know, those kind of things.
And desires is a lot about what I want for the future, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So you could say that's a sub-aspect of faith. So what do I have faith in for my future? What am I aspiring to do for my future? That's going to draw me, isn't it? So you could say my aspirations. So if I have the aspiration of power, can you see, I need a whole heap of people who have an aspiration to give me power in order for that to work. Right? If I have an aspiration to feel inferior, then I need a person who feels superior in order for that to work. Right? So it doesn't mean we have the same aspirations. It means that we have codependent aspirations sometimes when it comes to having some rapport. Yep. So we were over here.
My soul condition?
Okay, so what is your soul condition?
How loving or unloving I am?
Right, so it's your condition in love.
What else?
What else? Think about the four basics. Your condition of truth. Right now, your condition of humility
Faith,
and faith. Right?
and how much action I take.
And how much action you take about those things. This is really your condition now. Now, your soul condition is different to your soul aspiration. Your soul aspiration is what you desire for your future, and your soul condition is what you are right now. So you can say your soul condition is like what I am in this snapshot of time, and my soul aspirations are what I hope I will be in 1 year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. What I believe I will actually be by then has an effect too, doesn't it? Yep, very good. So now we're talking about the real causes of attraction, right? Yep. Is it?
So with Paget, there's a lot of discussion about him not being in rapport with you. So was it his condition in that moment in love and truth, or?
Well, the reason why we recommend that he prayed a lot was because that by receiving God's love, it brought him into more rapport with us. And why it did that is because when you pray, you're exercising faith to receive, and when you're exercising faith, your condition heightens temporarily. And now the people who might not have been able to talk to you before about a specific subject can talk to you about it now. In addition, it was important that he had some kind of Christian background, because he needed, so this background in his history and his experience and his education was also very important, because without that, we wouldn't be able to talk about concepts that he had prior or previously heard of, but now didn't really understand, because of the Bible, he didn't really understand them. But he could relate to the words, and he could relate to a degree, even though it might be in a false way, he could relate to them, and this gave us extra ability to share truth with him.
So if said you're not in rapport tonight, it is if he prayed, he could get himself into a condition for a period of time.
He could, yeah.
That you could connect. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, even though it'd be a temporary condition, yeah.
Leslie's touching on a very important aspect of rapport.
That's right.
Yeah, which
you can say.
Yeah. So rapport is governed by two things actually. So all of your rapport with people and with spirits is governed by these two, they're made up of these things, but it's essentially your condition and then your aspiration.
Oh, of course.
So those two things combine to create rapport, which is why someone can be in, maybe their condition doesn't have much love and truth, but they desperately desire it. They could come into rapport with quite a spirit with quite a lot of love and truth in them.
Yep.
Whereas a person in maybe not such a sinful condition, but in quite an apathetic state of their life, not really longing for very much, might just attract spirits who really are even darker than them because they want to influence the will of this person who doesn't have any aspiration. So these two aspects are always combining to create rapport with our relationships with the people around us, whether they're in spirit form or on earth.
So if I'm really tired and I've had a long day, I might be very loving, but I really don't give a shit that night because I'm just too tired. So
Well, you need to sleep, right?
Yeah.
And quite often we came to bed and it said, sorry mate, you need to go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like pointless. Yeah. Right. So, Anna, thank you.
I guess it comes down to action, but having common goals. So, yeah, taking action in the same direction as other people.
And
Yeah.
wanting to come together to take this action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just, Mary pointed out, and it's very important to see, that this aspiration and soul condition are really the biggest factors, aren't they? Aspiration involves your passions and desires. Aspiration involves your motivations. Aspiration involves what you want to be influenced into, doesn't it? Like, there are times when you have a motivation to go and do something. So let's say your motivation was to go fishing. Well, to do that, you're going to need a boat, and you're going to need some reel and some line, and, you know, depending on the type of fishing, you might have a fly fishing or the different types of fishing. You'd have to understand the different types of fishing. I don't know them all because I'm not a great fisherman. But
Well,
whatever they are, you know, I watched it a lot in my first century life. I fixed their net. So net fishing was definitely, you know, high on the priority back in our day. But, you know, so if you have the desire to go fishing, can you see that's going to cause you to act? It's going to cause you to, I need a boat, or I need to find a place where the water's good enough where I can fish from the shore, or whatever. I'll be attracted by the desire to go and do different things that satisfy the desire.
and I might quite like to be around other people who want to fish and
Yeah.
who have boats and
So if I'm a mad
have
keen
ideas-
fisherman,
have ideas about the best places to fish, I
Yeah.
might be quite interested in having a
I'll talk to
relationship
the other
with them.
fishermen. I'll want to know where's the good spots. I'll want to know what kind of fish they caught and whether they're any good to eat and all these other things. That's what's going to interest me, right? Because I want to fish. And all of these things start to interest me as a result. But if I'm like a bird watcher and somebody comes along and talks to me about fishing, I'm probably not going to be very interested. Right, so me and he will have very little rapport. Right? I'll be going, oh yeah, I'm just pretty bored with that subject. But look at this new, you know, Gordian finch that I saw down in Australia, and look at this, you know, I don't know. I am more keen to be a bird watcher than a fisherman. So don't get me on that subject. But anyway. Okay, so
But really, you could say almost all the other things that you've written on the board
are all one of these two things.
They're either condition or aspiration, aren't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So if you look at even proximity, in terms of physical, emotional, spiritual proximity, well, that's all about what's happened to you in your life, your experiences and your memories. So part of your soul condition is your memories. And your memories are very important, by the way, as to determining what you may choose to do in your future, and your idea of yourself is very much determined by your memories. Your experience in life, very much determined by your memories, right? So your memories play a huge part in a lot of God's laws, actually. And we can talk about that another time. But you can see that soul condition is a mixture of these things. What's my condition of love, my condition of truth, my condition of humility? So when we talk about addiction, that's about condition. When we talk about sin, that's about condition. But when we talk about wanting to sin, that's about aspiration. When we talk about wanting an addiction, that's about aspiration. When we talk about being in agreement with somebody, that's about an aspiration. But it's also mixed with my condition. I might want something, they're willing to give it, so now we enter an agreement. Similar interest is about what my memories have determined. Like oftentimes I'm interested in a thing and then I discover a new thing and I go, oh, new experience, new thing. I'm interested in that now. So now I run around trying to find anybody else who's interested in that so we can talk about it and find each other interesting. Yeah. Shared trauma is about memories.
And my attitude to that trauma is a lot about my aspiration, isn't it?
That's right.
So
what I want to do with it.
Do I want commiseration for my trauma? Do I want to deal with my trauma?
Do I want to live in my trauma?
Yeah. Do I want to move?
Do I not justify my rage in my trauma?
Yeah. So these are all things that are going to affect who's attracted to me and who I'm attracted to.
Yeah. Okay. So can you see a lot of it boils down to, as Mary said, just the two things. And all these other things are really part and parcel of these two things. Right? So, now we know how we establish friendships and rapport with people. Spirits are people, right? They're just people who have died. Right? And oftentimes we don't know how long ago they died, but they've died and they had a life on earth and now they're in the spirit world. And some of them haven't yet had a life in the spirit world because they're so earthbound because of all of their aspirations and their condition. They don't want to go anywhere else other than earth. They feel like they've missed out on their life on earth. They didn't have a full life. Or all the people they're interested in and all the things they're interested in are on earth, and there's none of those things in the spirit world. Like my father is a keen motorcyclist. He only just recently gave up riding his 900cc motorbike up through the hills of South Australia. He's 81, right? And becoming less firm, more infirm. But giving up his motorbike riding was a big thing for him, a big thing. Now, when he hits the spirit world, that's going to be interesting. No motorbikes in the spirit world. So what is he going to do? Now, if he's keen on riding motorbike, what would you do if you're a spirit? And the only place there is motorbikes are on earth. So for a little while, I'm sure my dad's going to go, oh, there's a new GP, the Grand Prix, the motorcycle Grand Prix, he's interested in them. New GP happening over in Belgium. I'll go there. I can go there now. Right? Oh, next one's in Phillip Island in Australia. I'll go there. Next one's in Austria. I'll go there. And we'll follow that around for a bit. That's the best case.
The worst case is that he goes, oh, that young lad who lived down the street from me, he's quite into motorcycles.
And he's got a 1200 whatever.
Maybe I can share in his feelings as he rides the motorbike.
I'll sit on the back of his bike and overcloak him a bit and while he's riding, and we'll see where we go with that. Yeah. My father would have loved to have been a motorcycle racer, so where do we go with that?
The issue is though, how's that going to happen? What would have to be in the motorcycle rider? There would have to be some openness in the motorcycle rider to share feelings with somebody.
Yeah.
So maybe he didn't get approval from his dad. And Alan, who's Jesus' dad, might be willing to give that approval. So then that might open him up to that shared exchange. But if the young lad who rides motorcycles is not really interested in anyone at all and he just wants to ride his motorbike, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So this is where the rapport is either going to form or not.
Yeah, so, my father probably will visit some of these places and then find a whole lot of motorcycle enthusiasts in those places, and he'll be pretty keen to probably spend a bit of time with them so he can ride their motorbike with them. So relatively innocent in a sense, but who knows, he might start going, I like this speed and I want a bit more of it, and he's influenced the guy to drive too fast, and you can easily do things like that as a spirit. You can if there is the rapport, where there is some level of agreement and addiction that's going on, you can easily, as a spirit, just go, I'll just influence it, a bit more on the throttle, bit more on the throttle, bit more on the throttle, until they've exceeded their own capacity to drive the thing, and then there's an accident or something. Yeah. So many times spirits cause accidents like that, particularly with young men, by the way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of young men driving cars or motorcycles, this is why there's a high proportion of young men driving cars and motorcycles that do have accidents, because frequently they are spirit influenced into such actions. Yeah? Yeah.
All right.
So here we go. We've got these things going on, right? Now, I don't think I'm in any view now. So we just adjust that. So we've got all these things going on. And really they all boil down to aspiration in terms of what I want for my future, and soul condition, what I am right now. That's really what it boils down to.
Now, Adrian had a question that's on that, is it?
It was
That
on.
microphone? Yep.
It may be related. I was wondering about, Alan in the spirit world finding that fella who's also interested in the motorbikes. How does that attraction, how does he know that little Johnny has that opening that he can hook into?
All he has to do is go to a location where the other person might be drawn to. So that my father knows that, motorcycle GP or also motorcycle, what they call it, superbikes. This is where people go racing their motorcycles. And there's one of those on every single weekend, pretty much most of the way through European summer. And there's about 40 or 50 of those races. Sooner or later he's going to hook up with someone else who likes doing the same thing.
And if he's not very developed, he might just try to kind of join, try to kind of get close to someone. Even if he doesn't really understand how it works, often by accident spirits go, oh wow, this guy's sharing his experience with me, and it's all happened through rapport that neither of them is conscious of how it's happening, but it's about the condition within them that is creating rapport.
So it's just like an attraction that...
It's just like when you make a friend, you don't go, oh, why is this happening? It's just
You're just
like,
automatically
oh,
in it,
this
don't you?
is nice, I like this person.
Yeah. And my younger brother, he's a motorcycle, he likes riding motorcycles too. He's got a 900cc motorcycle as well, that's actually sitting in his living room, and because he views it as pretty important. And so, in my dad's case, he could just overtake my brother.
Because they have a
That'd
lot
be
of,
simpler,
yeah.
and go riding with him, which is what he's done when he was on Earth. But both of them used to go riding together, so just a natural thing, isn't it? Someone's going riding, so I'll go for a ride with him. Yeah.
Or how many people who've lost a parent say, oh, when I just do this activity, I really feel
feel
mum
my
and dad
dad.
with me.
Well, I really feel my mum. That's exactly what's
So
happening.
you are feeling mum and dad.
Yeah, they're right there. It's probably on, if it's on a motorcycle or in the car, it's probably on the passenger seat, probably. Yeah. Makes sense? Yep, so come across to your left and over.
Just keep your hand up to Teddy so we can see. Which person was it, Dylan?
Yeah, up the back and then down.
My question has two parts. So if I'm in denial of my soul condition,
Yep.
versus if I know my soul condition but I haven't dealt with it yet, can it still be more protective from rapport?
Well, if you're in complete denial of it, obviously that's the least protective.
Yes.
If you are sort of aware but not yet awakened, then that's a better state.
Okay.
But still not going to really protect you much more than being in denial.
Because there's constant battle going on.
That's right.
It
You
requires
have
a
to
lot of
awaken before you're going
enlightenment.
to change.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the most protection,
That's because
aside from actually curing the problem.
when you
Okay.
awaken to sin, there's a change in your aspiration.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you know, when you're
Okay.
aware, you're like,
You're still
this
here
is my
in
soul
your condition.
condition,
Yeah.
but my aspiration is I still want it.
Yeah.
When you're awake, that's that icky feeling of like, oh, gross, I don't want this anymore,
Yeah.
even if you haven't dealt with it. And so that lessens the rapport.
Okay.
Aspiration has a very large impact on your rapport with spirits.
And
Yeah.
that requires awakening.
Yeah.
Because now I
But
can...
repentance. It requires repentance.
Right.
Yeah. which requires awakening.
Yeah.
So once I want to repent for any sinful addiction that I have, now I'm in a completely different state. And then when I actually repent and actually, something completely changes in me, I go through either emotionally or I receive some of God's love and the causes are taken away. Now my aspiration and my condition have changed.
And is there a benefit to knowing your soul condition as a totality, or is it just work at one issue at a time?
Well, obviously, the less you know, the more prone you're going to be influenced in ways you don't know.
Yes.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Okay.
The less you know about yourself,
Okay.
and the more you're acting in your addictions or, your sinful condition, the less you know about yourself. The less you know about yourself, the more open you are to being influenced in all sorts of ways that you don't understand.
So being aware, where I can sometimes see spirits now, and I can see them projecting or hooking in, but I still can't escape it. I'm fighting it all.
That's right, because you're not awake yet.
And that changes the aspiration.
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
Getting from awareness to awaken means that an aspiration is required.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But when you're fully awake, there's no longer the aspiration to engage the sin.
Right.
You've done the work, you're like, oh, yuck, I don't want that anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't repented fully, it changes the rapport quite a lot. Because actually, if you think about, spirit attractions, it's very similar to on earth. Like, I can say to Jesus, oh, I really don't want to go out to dinner Saturday. No, I really don't want to go. I really don't want to go. No, it's fine. Let's stay home. But if he can feel from me that I really want to go, if he's sensitive, he will feel that. And it's even more with spirit. If I had a detuned husband, he'd be like, oh no, she's fine staying home.
Yeah.
But obviously I don't, so he's like, you want to go to dinner or whatever. But a spirit is like, you want to go to dinner.
I can feel that.
Yeah, I can feel that. Well, you can say whatever you want, but
so I'm better off saying
whatever you say means nothing to me if I can feel the opposite thing.
Yeah. So I'm better off embracing that feeling that I want to.
Dam, I don't want to get into a discussion with you about
Sorry.
those things. We just want to answer these questions at the moment.
Thank you.
Let's stay principles.
Let's stay on the principles.
I guess I just wondered, is overcloaking always unloving, or is there a time, like as long as he's not causing the bike rider, for example, to go too fast or to get out of control, is there anything wrong with him going for a ride with the bike rider?
Yeah, it's always unloving.
Okay.
Because you're trying to share in another person's emotions all the time, rather than have your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's always unloving, yes?
The only loving
From God's
purpose
perspective.
I can see for overcloaking is like trance mediumship,
Yeah.
where it's very open.
Where
I'm now going to let a spirit take over my
Can we define
body.
it though, trance mediumship?
Yeah.
What it is let's say Mary sat down and she decided, through a decision of her own, she decided she was going to channel one of our spirit friends to you.
For a limited time.
For a limited time.
And I was honest with you about what was about to happen.
Yeah. Then she might go into sort of what's called a trance and the spirit will come, take over her body, talk through her, and then the spirit will leave. But she knows Mary is in control of what's happening. She knows what's going on.
Yeah.
That's the only time it's loving.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And even then I've got to do it for a loving purpose.
That's right.
Not an addictive one, because that would, if I just wanted you to praise me or adore me for this ability, then I'm sinning and it's not loving again.
Yeah.
So is there ever a time that you can feel a loved one that they're not overcloaking you?
Yeah,
Okay.
many times. Okay.
Yeah.
So just being able to differentiate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about the details. Let's focus on the principles first, because a lot of your questions get answered by understanding the principles.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Should be quick. Just a clarification on something you said a second ago about I always feel my mom when I blah blah blah, and you said that she's likely with you. How do we know, like say for example, sometimes I just feel like drops into my head and a loved one who's passed, suddenly feel them. Other times I see something that reminds me of them, and then I think, well, maybe I'm just thinking about them. Are they truly here?
As soon as you think about them, they're probably going to be drawn to you anyway.
Depends on their condition.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about the intellectual package and traveling.
Yeah, as soon as you think of
Depending on
someone,
where
they
they are?
receive the package. Yeah.
Depending on how far away
No.
or
No?
They might not respond if they're in a situation where they're quite involved in their
In what they're
emotional
doing,
addiction, or it might be a proper pursuit, but very often it's when someone's involved in like trying to manage their pain or engaging in an addiction, then they're probably not going to respond to that. Yeah. And it also depends a bit on your intention and aspiration at the time. If you're like, Uncle, Uncle Jack.
Every thought package comes out of you and does the person who has it on the receiving end of that does actually feel it as a package, and then they make a choice of what they're going to do with that package. Now, if it's a spirit, they actually see it as a package. There's a sort of it's not like a written package. It's sort of like a little brightness that occurs just above the brain of the spirit body, where the person you can see other people receiving packages. So this happens all the time. What you call telepathy, right, is really this. This thought package comes, and then it's up to you, the person receiving the package, as to what you do with that. Now, if you're a spirit and you're in an addiction with the person, let's say on Earth, you're going to probably respond every single time, right? But if you're a spirit who's, got a pretty busy life in the celestial heavens, has lots of friends, got lots of other things going on, you'll receive the package, but you might not respond to it because you might have other things going on. You might need to do other things, right? So you might not respond. But every single, and this, by the way, all of you are receiving packages without you even knowing most of the time. But this is what happens on Earth. This happens on Earth just as much as it happens in the spirit world.
Well, and maybe we can answer one of those questions of like, whose thoughts are these that I'm having? Someone asked that,
Yep.
Is it me or is it a spirit?
Yeah.
So, based on rapport and what Jesus just said, what do you guys reckon? How do you tell? Yep, Sandy.
I don't actually know if this is based on rapport, but maybe seeing if is this my personality, or is this something that I would normally think of, or does this seem outside of my normal thoughts and beliefs?
Yeah. How would a spirit let's say a spirit has influenced your thoughts, how would they do? How
does the thought enter you?
Yeah. So
it's just a package above you when they transmit it. It hasn't entered you. So how did it enter you?
Say you're sitting there together, and one of you receives this sort of thoughts. But we've been in audiences where 10 people are having the same thoughts.
Even more.
Even more.
Whole audience.
You can feel it descend sometimes. Like when people get very triggered about something, or they're very, and suddenly people will come up to us afterwards and go, I felt bad about you in that section. I was thinking this or that, or or sometimes sexualized thoughts happen for people, all surrounding one person in a group, and 2 or 3 people, if they're very honest, will go, oh my gosh, that happened to me too. So they've obviously received some thoughts there.
So the thought package has been delivered by somebody, and they've actually allowed that package into their mind. So there's got to be a reason why you would allow certain packages into your mind but not allow other ones.
And why other people in the group didn't have that experience.
So maybe if you receive it, you have some kind of opening where if it's attacking spirits, maybe you feel like you deserve the attack.
Correct.
Or you feel inferior.
Correct.
Or you have a feeling, sometimes say it's where you're having feelings suddenly to attack somebody else. Sometimes you can have a feeling that attack is justified, but sometimes you can just have the belief that if someone's attacking, I should just do whatever they want. It'll calm them down. And then you end up taking on their thoughts.
Yeah, so fear of their attack. No,
it's really actually a belief. It's a belief that the best way to calm down someone who's really upset is just do whatever they want.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if the person you can feel is angry, delivering the thought, and you've got a feeling inside of yourself that I've got to pander to an angry person, then you'll receive the thought. if you are worried about sexual abuse in your life, you know, not that you necessarily had it, but you're worried about it. You worry that, you know, you worry about your sexual feelings, for example. Now any spirit can transmit sexual feelings to you and make them seem like they're yours.
Like sexual shame, maybe?
Yeah, like sexual shame, for example. They can do that easily enough because you're worried about it all the time, and so you've got an opening. There's a rapport there straight away. Your condition is allowing the rapport.
Your aspiration is, I don't want to feel my worry, I don't want to feel my fear, I don't want to feel my fear.
Yeah, which actually attracts more of the thing you're worried about, ironically. Which all of you know, right? You start worrying about something, and what do you find? You know, you start finding, you know, that's why they call it Murphy's Law, isn't it?
But it actually happens because a spirit can feel they can exploit it in you. If I just come to Sandina and I just tell her she's terrible, and she doesn't want to feel about that, then she's going to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Because I'll stop telling her and say, you're not terrible if you go and do that thing.
Yeah.
It's just the way people manipulate each other in relationships as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we're all, like, multiple people are receiving maybe similar thought packages, if we don't have the opening, is there potential to, like, see it and then dismiss it, or see it and be like, no, thank you?
Yeah, like often I have that where I can feel, I don't see a thought package or something, but I can feel Spirit's intentions around us. Yeah. And I've had the experience where, you know, initially I would just take on a Spirit's intentions. I have that belief, like, calm Dad down, just do whatever he says. You know, that kind of a feeling. So then I would take on all these feelings. I'd be channeling feelings that weren't even my own. And then over time, I'm like, oh, hang on, no, that's not a good thing. Deal with changing my aspiration and my condition. But I could still feel the spirits and their intentions. But I just wouldn't take them on anymore.
So the thought packages under those circumstances get delivered, but you're not taking them on, you're not acting upon them. Yeah.
And I don't even feel them like thought package. I feel them like feelings. It's
they
just
include
a different
feelings,
sense,
don't they?
isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's also feeling packages as well, obviously, which are more powerful than thought packages, by the way. A thought is relatively easy to dismiss. A feeling is a lot harder to dismiss. So an example of that is if a person says, I'm angry with you, but they don't really seem very angry, then you're probably not going to worry about it much. But if a person's angry with you and they're really angry with you and they're in a furious rage, now you can feel it, right? You can feel the match-up between the thought and the feeling, and now it's like very hard. Now you're going to have to do some things to deal with that. You had an example of that on Friday with one of the ladies who asked a question, who was angry with me, right? Yeah, right at the end. Yeah.
But in terms of the question about how do I tell what's my thoughts and spirits, in my experience, I've had to want to know what my condition is. So be sensitive to myself, understand my own feelings, because then I can differentiate someone else's, you know. But often when we want to deny where we're at, what we feel, what we think, that's when we're most open to having things given to us, and we wonder, is it me? And also have an aspiration to be moral in terms of God's morality. So that helped me immensely. But, you know, until that you want to do that work, gets confusing sometimes. You can rely on those things that you said, like, is this really my personality? Do I feel like this usually, or has this happened all of a sudden? But the more sensitive you become to your soul condition, your actual condition, even if that's sin, you go, yeah, that's not my issue, you know, you can tell. And that's when and also if you have this aspiration for morality, then you can actually start to say, well, that's not me, who is that? And you can start to sort of identify who's around you, actually.
Sort of establish the bona fides of the people who are talking to you. And
it helps you also to understand, it's sort of, once you have that aspiration, you can learn more about your condition as well very rapidly, because you're like, well, why does this person think that they can say that to me? What is the opening in me? You know, all those kinds of things. And so it can help you immensely, actually, as long as you're humble.
Okay, so everything is about the condition and the aspiration, right? So now when we look at a lot of your questions, we can start to answer them very clearly, can't we? Understanding that everything is about either your condition or your aspiration. So let's look at, I think Mary took
I did, I've got
a bit of a snapshot of some of the questions.
Yes.
So what she's going to do is read out some of the sort of questions that you had, and then we'll try to relate it back to this principle of soul condition and aspiration and what's going on.
Okay. Top of the list, the Holy Spirit talking to me. Do you want to answer that one first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, does the Holy Spirit talk?
No.
No. What is the Holy Spirit?
Conduit.
It's a conduit, but it's an energy. It's flowing from God to you, isn't it? It's a conduit, which is God's energy being established through the law, that the love through which needs the conduit to flow to you, to your soul, it has to go through something, and the Holy Spirit is that thing that it's going through. So it doesn't talk to you.
So, and God talking to me as a voice as well.
God doesn't talk to me in a voice either, because to talk in a voice, he would have to talk to my spirit body and my physical body. Both bodies are created by whom? Humans, yeah. Through the procreation, right?
Yeah.
What God's communicating with is the soul. And so God communicates with your soul. Now, your soul does have hearing senses, but the majority of them are based around your emotions. So God's going to talk through emotions, not through words, through any of the things requiring your intellect either. So, and also it's dependent upon, God will never talk to you unless you want to be talked to from God, right? So through your emotions. And so if something just, all of a sudden you hear a voice from God and you didn't even have a thought that you wanted that, it wasn't from God. You understand? Because God honours free will.
So then we need to say, if I feel like I'm guided by God through, not through my aspiration, but like Sarah was saying, sort of drawn,
yeah.
Or if I hear the Holy Spirit as a voice, or if I hear God as a voice, what's going on? We need to answer that question, don't we?
What do you think must be going on?
And how do I tell what's going on? Yeah.
Well, it's pretty easy to see what must be going on if you understand the truth about how God communicates. So what must be going on? There has to be a spirit who doesn't honour free will, who does not honour God's truth, who is prepared to masquerade as God to you, given that that's what you believe, and he's prepared to masquerade. So what does that tell me about his condition?
Low.
It has to be quite low. Right. Now, of course, if I could feel him or her, I would know that. But you can see, on one hand, if I can feel, it's easy because I can just go, I know who that is. If you don't feel, then you've got to use some logic, don't you, to determine what's going on. Does he honour free will? No. Does he honour what I want, in terms of what I ask for? No. But is he giving me what I want? Yes. Interesting. Like he's not honoured free will, but he's giving me what I want. What's going on now? There's got to be something involved in that, right? Has to be. Now I think you asked that question, Sarah. So yes. you want to get some clarification?
Yeah, and I'd like to extend the question a bit too.
Yep. Yes. So I maybe wasn't clear. I wasn't hearing a voice. It was more prayed, and then felt this guidance. Do you know what I mean?
Still not God, right?
Still not God.
No, but it might be a well-intentioned spirit.
Yes, that's what I wanted.
So it could be a guide?
Of course.
Okay.
But if he's encouraging you to do something that's loving and to your benefit, then he's a good guy.
Okay.
But the problem is, what's your definition of what's loving?
Yeah.
That's going to be the biggest determining factor, isn't it? If you think loving is, let me get away with not feeling this bad emotion, and he says, I'll help you do that, then that's not loving from God's perspective. So your definition, your condition, how you internally believe what love is going to determine a lot about who you're actually attracting in this sort of engagement.
Yeah.
You follow?
Mm-hmm.
If your version of love matches what he feels is true, even though from God's perspective it's completely wrong, you might interpret that as a good guy.
So, I won't get into the example, but as a healing of my daughter, and each step got her to the place where she was healed. So.
But by your own admission, you and your daughter haven't dealt with the emotion that created that illness.
Correct.
Yeah.
So who do you think it was?
Bad guy.
Well, when you say bad guy, let's define. A really bad guy is malicious, wants power over you, wants to destroy your life. That's a really bad guy, right?
Yeah.
A person who thinks they have your best interest at heart will feel to be a good guy, but he's still not completely obeying God's laws himself. And that's the class of spirit that you're attracting in this regard.
Yeah.
He thinks he's a good guy, and he is better than a bad guy. He's not someone who wants to destroy your life. He wants to help you. His motive for helping you is about helping you get over the thing without having to go through something, though.
Yeah, and actually this guy's feeling is you can't cope with it. You can't cope with it, Sarah.
And you shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to. I'll help it.
I'll
help you. You know.
It's too hard for your daughter to cope with it, too hard for you to cope with it, so I'm going to help you both.
So there's the rapport.
There's the rapport. You have that feeling.
You feel, yes, it is too hard for my daughter to go through. It's too hard for her to go through the emotions that cause it. I don't want her to have to go through those emotions. There's your rapport. And now you've got faith in this person.
Yeah.
And therefore, now he can share information with you and say, this is what you do, that's what you do, this is what you do. And a lot of it might be right, actually. And then he can tell you what to do, and you do it, and your daughter gets better. But the actual emotion causing the problem is not resolved.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean she's permanently better.
Or you.
Or you.
Yeah. But, and this is going to be the tricky thing, is that now if you say, oh, my aspiration is changing, I think I want to deal with this emotion for the good of me and the good of my family. Say this is developing in you. But you've got this very strong rapport now with this guy who's like, Sarah, I know what's best for you. Remember? I helped you with all this stuff. You can trust me. Here's the feeling of me. Remember this feeling of me? Yeah. And then what tends to happen is when our aspiration and our condition changes, there can be a bit of a tug of war go on. Because you're like, whoa,
what my daughter's cured.
It was so easy when I listened to him last time, and I don't know if I really want to go there with this emotion, and then if he's kind of a bad good guy, if we can put another category in there, or a good bad, I don't know.
So we call it a good guy in delusion.
Yeah.
Well, does it feels quite confusing?
Yeah, and it will for a while.
It will, yeah.
So when it's actually God speaking to you, not in words. But it's not confusing. You just know.
Yeah.
You have not yet had God speaking to you. So everything at this stage has been Spirit speaking to you, trying to get you to do different things, trying to improve your condition, trying to improve your life, trying to help you with your life.
With truth and love and these things.
And some of them are trying to help you with the soul condition in a proper way, and some of them are like this Spirit who's trying to help you avoid. You understand? And this is very common for most people, right? But not yet, because haven't experienced God. Because when you do experience God, you will firmly know, and it will be also in combination with the conscience. You will know.
Yeah, it'll be like, okay, got it.
Can I just point out that even you asking the question was a demonstration of how the conscience works. God wants you to ask the question so you'll see the truth of what's going on. You're not wanting, he's basically saying, find out more about this because it's not me. You understand?
You want me, Sarah.
You want me, Sarah.
This is not me.
But this is not me. Don't think it's me, right? Find out more about what's going on, and that caused you actually to ask the question. And there were some good spirits around who wanted you to ask the question. And so in the answer of the question, you get, okay, this is just a spirit who was trying to look after me and my family, trying to look after your daughter too, but doing it in a way that he wants to progress, which is to avoid his feelings. Yeah. We can talk to him later one time when we're private with you, and you can get to know him more, and when you know him more, you'll understand when he was being around you, which has been quite a lot. He's trying to help you, right? He's not what I'd call a bad guy. He's not a person who's malicious, trying to destroy your life, or he's trying to help your life, but his method of helping you is the method that he wants to be helped in. It's not the same as God's method. Make sense, Sarah? Yeah. So for your daughter to be completely cured, she will need at some point to go through the emotion. And that's what he feels. He doesn't want to do that. So what he's actually doing now is supplying your daughter some energy to heal her constantly. Does that make sense to you? So and the things he asked you to do improved your daughter's rapport with him, which allowed him to give her more energy, so that wherever the energy systems in her own body are not working properly because of her soul emotion, he's propped them up. And this has caused an improvement in her condition. Right? And this is how healings occur with most spirits, actually. Because you remember that God's laws cause conditions when they're broken. Right? And so any spirit who doesn't understand that at the soul level, he's going to try to negate the effect of God's laws, which is what this spirit is trying to do. He hasn't realised that's what he's trying to do, but that's what he's trying to do. Make sense? And your feeling about your daughter, and your worry about her, and your stress about her, and your stress about her condition, and all of that has drawn him to you and to her, because he wants to help. But he wants to help the way he thinks help should be given, which is not the way God feels help should be given. God wants help to be given in a permanent manner, so it's a permanent cure. The Spirit is constantly supplying energy now, right? So it's not a permanent cure. Now, once that Spirit disconnects, what's going to happen? Possibly your daughter will get back to the same condition she was in before, unless another spirit comes along, right? Or
you deal with the feelings.
You deal with the feelings, and she deals with the feelings, and then she'll be cured. Yeah, properly cured. So what's happening at the moment is a temporary thing. Now I know that's not something what a lot of people want to hear, because they want to hear that it's permanent. Particularly when the injury is life-threatening or illness is life-threatening, they want to hear that it's permanent. But the problem is it's only permanent while that spirit is supplying the energy. Now, we have seen many people cured and the spirits supply the energy until they're passing. So we know people who have been cured from cancer where the spirit is still with them, overcloaking them and supplying. When I say overcloaking, there's a strong rapport between the person and the spirit continues to supply energy to keep the body going. The same thing also happens with drunkards on earth, ironically. Many drunkards on earth are actually drunkards because spirits are overcloaking the person on earth, and even though their body is wrecked by the alcohol, the spirit's keeping them alive so they can continue, so the spirit can continue sharing in the drink. So that's a more malicious spirit example compared to the example with your daughter, but both of them are not understanding what they're doing. You understand what I mean? Yeah. Good. Is that clear, Sarah? Yeah. Not the answer you want, but clear. Yeah. So the issue that a lot of people find is that there will be spirits come along, and it depends on your belief systems of what kind of rapport they can obtain. So, like, if you had a Christian background, you'll start. All they need to do is say, "I'm the Holy Spirit," or give you that feeling, and now you'll probably trust them more, and therefore you'll probably do what they say. Right? Now, unfortunately, it's not true, and therefore but they think they're helping you. It doesn't matter that it's true or not. They just think, for them, they just think, I'm helping you. So if this is the way I get to help you, then it's going to have to be this way. So an example of that is I once I had a medium contact me, and she said, I've been talking to Peter and Paul, like the apostles from the first century, Peter and Paul. And she said, and they've been saying this, and they've been saying that, and they disagree with you here, and they disagree with you there, and so forth. And you say, well, I said, well, let's do an experiment, right? Let's ask them directly whether they are Peter and Paul, because I knew they had enough development to not lie when asked directly. But they did not have enough development to let her believe the lie. So in other words, they were prepared, to let her believe the lie if she believed it, because that established a stronger rapport. But if they were asked directly, their condition was such that they would have to say the truth. They were in the second sphere of the spirit world, and they would have to say the truth to stay there. If they didn't say the truth, they'd have to go to the first sphere. So they were in the condition where they'd have to say the truth. So I said, let's do the experiment. Let's ask them directly, like, are you Peter and are you Paul? The answer immediately back was? No. Now, this woman on earth had believed that they are Peter and Paul for nearly 12 years. So you imagine the effect it had on her. She was like gutted. She never spoke to me again, and she never spoke to those two spirits again either. Because she was so upset by the fact that they had claimed, well, she thought they claimed, but what happened was she wanted Peter and Paul to come to her, and these two spirits came because the desire wasn't actually pure in her. It was all about getting some power over others and getting some popularity as a medium. She was quite a good medium, but she wanted this sort of I'm channeling Peter and Paul feeling, right? And as a result, these two spirits came to her from the second sphere and started channeling information to her, which was often quite accurate, which then just increased her feeling that they were Peter and Paul, right? And of course, a person in the second sphere is more loving than you. So how do you tell how loving they are? You know, if you just feel they're more loving than me, so, I got to trust them type of feeling, which is what she felt. She'd been trusting them for 12 years, and then after these discussions, she didn't want to talk to me anymore because she was worried about what else might happen through any conversation, and she also didn't want to talk to them anymore because she felt she couldn't trust them either, right? Which was very unfortunate. I said I did try to email her back and say, we can talk about this more, but she just would not. Yeah? There was another medium that I visited with John the Apostle when he was on earth, and we went to see this medium, and this medium was able to channel who we were to us without us asking. So she was able to say, you're Jesus and you're the Apostle John, right? So the spirit with her had enough knowledge of what was going on to be able to channel that. I went to her again. We started talking about the development of the spirit with her because she was not able to channel any more information. And as a result, we just started discussing the spirit with her. The spirit with her was a natural love spirit which was receiving information from celestial spirits and transferring it via the medium to who she was talking to. Right? So it was like celestial spirits talking to another spirit, and then spirit would talk to the person through the medium to a person on earth. So you'd ask her a question like, should I eat meat? And she'd say, yes. And then I'd say, who said that? Because I knew it wasn't my celestial friends. And the spirit goes, I said that. And I said, did you ask the other spirits who come to you? This was through the medium. She was a very good medium. And did you ask the other spirits who had come to you about that? And she said, no. And I said, well, how about you do that and then tell me the answer? And then there's a bit of silence, and she comes back and says, they're saying no. So they're saying I shouldn't eat meat, and she's saying I should. Fish it was, actually, she suggested. And I'm going, so which spirit is saying I should, and which spirit is saying I shouldn't? And it was clear through that interaction which spirit was saying one thing and which spirit was saying another. Anyway, through that process, we eventually got to know the Spirit a bit. And in getting to know the Spirit, eventually the Spirit, we talked to the Spirit about receiving love from God. And as soon as she received love from God, this is a Spirit who had been with the woman for all of her life. She was a medium from childhood, and all of her life this Spirit had been her guide, for her person who had, she was sort of the primary contact for the medium. The Spirit felt differently after receiving God's love, and because the Spirit felt differently, the woman on earth could not recognise her feelings anymore, and they lost rapport. Now, the medium blamed me for that. She said, "What did you do to me? You're evil. What did you do to me?" So she'd never thought I was evil before then. She'd actually been told that I was Jesus before then, right? And that we would work together, which we did work together for a little short period of time. But her concern about no longer being, and I tried to explain to her the reason why is because the feelings now of that Spirit are very different to yours. And she's now received some of God's love and you have not. And that's caused you to now feel differently than she does. She wouldn't have it. She wanted to tell me that I'd done something evil to her. So when I tried to see her again, because she lived in a different state than me, she wouldn't see me anymore. As an example of what happens when you trust something, and then the thing you trust, that you've trusted for years and years and years, changes, and then what do? See, the soul condition didn't change for the person on earth. The soul condition and the aspiration changed for the Spirit. No longer any rapport. Right. And sad, because this woman had very good connection with that Spirit, and if the woman had changed a bit with her soul condition on earth, she would have maintained that connection rather than enter a state of mistrust. And that would have benefited the woman on earth as well as the Spirit, as well as many hundreds of other people she was channeling to. But what happened afterwards was, and I got to hear this through another, her guide changed, she said, and she now had a male spirit who was in the second sphere guiding her after that. And the whole friendship between her and the Spirit that had been going on for years and years and years, the woman who was in her 60s, was lost.
All right, well now everyone just feels like, this is bad, isn't it?
Why? I thought that was a good example.
How do we know, Jesus? How do we know?
Okay, can you see the woman on earth was unwilling to examine her own condition and unwilling to understand the laws of rapport. She'd had this rapport since childhood and she trusted it, but she didn't understand it. And this is the case with many mediums. They do not understand why they have the gift they have. And they don't understand who it's with and the connection they have. And so when it changes, their life sort of changed with it. And not always in a good way, they feel. Yeah. So that was in answer to the Holy Spirit question. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. What's the next one?
Well, I wanted to pick up on some of the things you were talking about with Sarah, about guides, guardians, God, and other family members. Who's who? How do we tell who's who? So, and also, okay, go for it.
Well, I need to say a general thing first. If the person is in alignment with God's truth, then it doesn't matter who's who, because they're trustworthy. Can you see that? If they're in alignment with God's truth, then they're trustworthy. The issue you face is, are they in alignment with God's truth? Right? Oftentimes we don't know. Oftentimes we don't even know ourselves what God's truth is. And so therefore it's very hard to determine who is in alignment with God's truth. But if I knew what God's truth was and my conscience was open, because that's the method that the most reliable method that I can receive
Which
truth.
is a function of my aspiration.
Which is a function of aspiration and condition, both. Right?
But my conscience is really a sincere desire for God's truth, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's determined a lot by your condition or your beliefs and other things like that too. So if those two things change towards the aspiration for the conscience, right, and my conscience is actually working, I'll be able to ask the question, bang, I get the answer straight away. No, this person's this person's that, this person's whoever. You know, if the person is honest, they will tell you, but you can't trust that they'll be honest because they're like any other person on earth when they first pass. Sometimes they're honest and sometimes they're dishonest. Right? And that's the trouble. Unless you can feel that the person is honest and sincere, which requires a change in your own condition to determine, you're not going to know whether they're honest and sincere. It's only after time goes past, through interactions, that you go, oh, I don't know if that's very sincere or that's very honest or whatever. And you can ask more questions, right? How have you come to be here at this group? This evil maniac Jesus from Australia, right, which is what you've heard about me on the internet, right, and you're coming and listening. What's wrong with you, right? Well, what's happened is that over time you've come to trust some of what I've said, isn't it? Over time. That trust has developed over time. Many of you still don't even know who I am, but you sort of, the logic and the love and the truth in what I say appeals. And for those of you who have applied it, it's changed your life. And so that causes you to trust somebody more. You understand? Well, the same applies with your relationship with spirits. If you put something into action and it seemingly benefits your life, you've got to ask yourself, are you avoiding something and it's benefiting that, or are you dealing with things and it's benefiting that? Because if you're dealing with it and it's benefiting that, that's in harmony with the truth. If you're avoiding things and it's benefiting that, then that's not in harmony with the truth. Right? So you can easily tell who a person is by, over time, by examining what happens.
I often feel that when we talk about a lot of the principles we've talked about this weekend, sin, spirit interactions, all of these things, I understand there's a very strong desire to, like, what is the truth? How can I know right now? What's my sin? How do I, and how do I awaken to it right now? Or how do I know who's around me? But God's way is if you're developing your soul, you're developing your free will, you're developing your awareness, you're developing your sensitivity. This is a developing thing that the whole earth experience, and even most of the spirit world till the 8th sphere, is all about you developing in all of those qualities and coming to be yourself in harmony with love and coming to understand what that means and who am I, what is my personality. And so
it's not just to the 8th sphere though, is it?
Oh, even beyond
it's
there,
forever.
We're still doing that, expressing ourselves more and more in harmony with love after we've reached the 8th sphere. So a lot of these issues with spirit interactions, the same principles apply. It's a development that we're going to gain more awareness of who's around us. We're going to gain more awareness of their intentions. We're going to gain more awareness of who's my guide and who's granny who wants to be my guide, and she's a bit bossy actually, and she was right about that one thing, but also not so good.
I found my car keys because of it. I don't know if I'm going to find my passions because of it.
She really wants me to have a house and 3 kids, and and I don't know if that's me. So being in a process of becoming more sensitive to your soul condition and aspiring to bring it into harmony with God's love and truth, to become more humble, to me that has been the fastest way to develop my mediumship, to understand who's around me, because the same principles apply to all of it as to my relationships on earth and in the spirit world as well. Yeah. So be willing to experiment, be willing to wait and see, be willing to analyse what you're being told in relation to does that really meet with the loving principle? Does that, if I think it does, okay, can I experiment with this and then measure the outcome as well? Yeah.
Okay. Which brings us perhaps to one of the questions about the family, what's it called?
Constellation. Is that what we call it?
Yeah.
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 All right, so given what we know now about soul condition and aspiration governing rapport, those of you who are doing family constellation stuff or are engaged in it, what could you, do you want to explain what it is for the benefit of others who might not know? And then let's deduce what might be some of the principles or some of the factors involved. Who wants to do it?
I'll attempt to explain it because it's a difficult thing to put into words, but it's usually done in a group where we're investigating usually an issue, and you're
when
choosing.
you say issue, you mean an emotional issue? Or
it could be a medical issue, it could be a relationship issue, it could be a
so
family
I'm fighting
issue.
with my husband, I've got gout, something.
Yeah. And then the representatives are chosen to represent your gout and you and maybe your grandfather.
Mother and your father or whatever.
Exactly. Or so.
And who decides who is represented?
Usually the facilitator of the constellation, or sometimes somebody might be drawn.
People put up their hands.
People put up their hands.
So if I have gout and so I'm coming, I want to solve this gout issue.
Yeah.
Then you might select someone. So Emma might become me.
Yes.
Anna might become my gout.
Yes.
And then
Michael might become my dad. And
and Pamela might say, I think the grandfather is involved here.
Yeah, that's right. So Pamela becomes grandpa.
Yeah. And then those representatives are placed, kind of in the center, and then they feel into each, what they are representing, and then they allow themselves to kind of move or rearrange themselves. And
do they speak? Do they?
Minimally, usually. It's usually.
So it's all about spatial.
Looking at the dynamics between the two, or the what's happening in relation to one another.
And are you the facilitator telling people where to go?
No.
Or like Anna is deciding, it's here, Emma is deciding.
Yeah, each representative is choosing for themselves
what they say and do.
Exactly. Yes. So it's like very clearly orchestrated by spirits.
Very clearly. Very clearly.
I'm very curious about this conversation.
Yeah, and you were saying it's amazing what happens.
In my minimal experience, sometimes it's amazing. We've never met the grandmother. The person who's representing the grandmother says, I didn't even have to think or make a decision. That came out, or that movement came out, and then the feedback is like, that's my grandmother, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, so what would govern, can we agree this is largely orchestrated by spirits? Do we? Yep.
With the purpose? What's the purpose?
In my opinion, is to become more aware of issues that we're in denial of.
So in our soul condition? Is it emotion based?
Yes, very emotional based. Or maybe there's issues within the family dynamic, like belief systems, like a false belief systems that are passed down through a family line.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course, we're asking all these questions we already know the answer to, right?
Yes, We're trying to draw out the principles for your benefit, but Okay, and so we're saying spirits, we're agreeing, because how else?
Can I ask, what's the point of all of you getting together? What's the point of it?
I think to have a visual, representation of, so people can see it.
So the
and I think there's like a kind of like you see it to believe it. Like if it's happening, you can't. It's easier.
So you're talking
harder
about
to deny.
giving people awareness.
No, I don't think that's the.
No, I don't think so either.
But can I just ask a different question? What is the real reason for getting together? The real reason.
What, like if you had to?
Personally, I've found it helpful.
Yep.
You know, it's a lot. Some of these things where it's like, okay, I'm finding people who are wanting to explore, go deeper. You know, like these similar interests of wanting to. And
what's the real reason?
We're saying
that's not the real reason. What's the real reason? Fundamentally, isn't it that you feel you need help to access something emotionally? Isn't that the reason?
Me.
Yep.
Help me.
I was really resistant to doing it.
Yep.
And so when I did decide to try it,
yep.
It was because there were some real difficulties within my family, deep difficulties. And I had heard that this could help my family.
All of which God could share with you through the conscience. All of which God could do with you individually without needing help from anyone else.
But can you finish your story? What happened? Because I think I know what happened.
Mm-hmm. So we did it, and
with your family or just you?
Well, just family member and me.
Yep.
And I mean, I was part of it.
Yep.
And so that was a couple of years ago. And there have been some really amazing positive change within my family that I never thought I'd see.
All right.
Big, like, further family, uncles and aunts.
Yeah, so people who weren't involved in the, yeah. So why do you think that might happen?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know.
All right, let's talk about it. So if we know this about rapport, spirits who are going to be involved in this are going to be drawn by the collective aspiration of the people involved. Can we agree that that's logical? Yep. So if the aspiration, clearly one of the biggest aspirations Jesus has pointed out is, I need help, I can't cope. Okay, right? So that's one.
I want a magical way of solving this problem. Do you know what I mean by a magical way? Like something that all I have to do is a little thing here and bang, there's a big change.
Now, I would say that that's almost one of the more innocent aspirations, actually, because depending on who is facilitating it, there could be other aspirations that are affecting the rapport to which spirits come. So if the facilitator is like, I just want to help people and I want to bring awareness and I want, these aspirations are not in harmony with God's way, but they're not malicious or evil, right? So that's going to govern a bit who comes to help spiritually. If my aspiration is, I want to feel important doing this, and actually I want magical fixes for people, and actually it should be easy, and actually I love how everyone goes, wow, this really helps, and all of these kinds of things. Can you see immediately my aspiration, and if I'm the facilitator, I have the biggest impact on rapport? We're getting darker now, aren't we? We're getting darker. And so spirits, what kind of spirits might come? Yeah, let's boss people around. We like power too. We're going to force them into this, or we're going to, all these kinds of things can happen. Okay? So that's the aspiration side of it. And the rapport is going to be governed by the aspiration as well as the condition of the people there.
Of everyone in the room.
Yeah. Now let's say
my aspiration is primarily to any hard thing that I have to deal with, I want to make easier. Let's say that's my aspiration. What's going to happen?
What kind of spirits might get involved there?
Ones that help you avoid.
Microphone. Sorry.
Perhaps spirits that help us avoid the emotions.
Yeah, but if you believe dealing with emotions is your way forward,
what kind
and
of
you've got spirits around you who, but inside of you, you really want to be able to deal with them easily. You don't want to have to go through the
Well, that's a good point, because in my, again, a couple of times that I've done constellation work, it's very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
I've had big emotions.
Whose emotions?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that's what you
Are
have.
they yours?
Well,
Are they the
that's
spirits?
a good point. When I've been a representative, it doesn't feel like they're mine.
Mm-hmm.
When I've been the one, what would you be called if you're
the gout, or no, the gout or the person?
The client,
The client.
then it feels like they're mine. I'm witnessing these representatives and having an emotional experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about the truth of this, what's going on? How much do we talk about, okay, spirits are going to come, and if you're grandma's probably going to come and overcloak you. Is this open? Do we talk about that? No.
Like, see, the problem with a lot of what these kind of things do is they're attracting a group of spirits whom you do not know, and you have not identified their you haven't validated their identity.
You're not even acknowledging that it's spirits there doing this stuff with you.
You don't understand their motives. For the large part, your motive is to avoid some emotions or avoid some hard choices in your day-to-day life, is probably a better way of saying it. You want to have some emotions sort of isolated from your life. In other words, you want to be able to go through some emotions and hopefully your whole life changes without you having to make other decisions in your life. You hope that there's a magical solution. Fundamentally, that's what you're hoping for. Now, what kind of spirits are you going to attract? Are they going to be spirits on the divine love path? No. Right? They're not interested in magical solutions. They're interested in permanent ones. They're also not interested in you avoiding decisions in your life. They're interested in you taking responsibility for your life and making some decisions in your life. All right? How many of you, when you do it, feel uncomfortable before it happens? There's quite a number. Why do you reckon the discomfort is there? Want to start, Lisa?
So I don't have a lot of experience. I've only tried it once.
Yeah.
And there's just something in me that just didn't feel right. So about letting, I did feel like something was coming over me. I did get some really interesting feedback from it, but at first it was like this, it didn't feel so good, and then the feedback even felt like it was true, but it was like a pressure to like fix it right away almost, you know? Like, so that's been my experience. So it's like there's a feeling of resistance maybe?
Now the average person facilitating would say you're resistive.
Yeah.
Rather than maybe recognising it as a comment coming from God through the conscience.
Right.
Wouldn't they?
See, the issues I see is that you're sort of
it's very dangerous. To be honest with you, it's very
you're
dangerous.
playing games with spirits without being educated.
Yeah.
No one there is being educated about what they're playing with. Yeah. And the aspiration of the facilitator, as well as the other people involved, are going to govern what spirits come.
Yeah.
And they're going to govern the efficacy, if I can call, I don't even think we can call it something that is efficient to do.
Yeah.
But even say there's the scenario where bigger family things happen.
Yeah.
What can happen is that the people who are involved in the constellation, who are in the spirit world, come. They observe. They're like, oh wow, yeah, I messed up that granddaughter, or they might gain an awareness and then run off and then pressure their son, who's the uncle, fix
to make
this.
some changes.
Hey, well, you've stuffed up here. We're stuffed up. We've stuffed up. Fix it all. But is anyone's free will or truthful awareness of what's gone on really engaged there? It's more sort of bossing around, isn't it? Yeah. Rather than people dealing with the causes of what's gone wrong in their life and why.
And all for the purpose of wanting a magical solution to it all.
Yeah. An end to sort of suffering without dealing with the cause of the pain that was the source of the eventual suffering.
And also, many of you don't realise you've actually attracted darker spirits to you doing it.
Yes. Yes, and codependence with those darker spirits, you know.
Yeah, certainly can.
This was before I knew about divine truth.
Oh, good, I understand.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what can I do to help my family now? I want to fix it.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. I think we need to resolve what's going on here.
Because there's even factors we haven't really talked about yet, isn't there?
A lot, There's a lot going on in these events.
Yeah. And the spirits who want to have feelings are often attracted to this because they know, these people want to have feelings and I want to have my feelings. But
no, they want commiseration for their feelings. Correct. Having a person on earth feel their feelings makes them feel like they can feel their own feelings. Yeah. And a lot of times, what you're actually feeling when you're having a cry or whatever is not your feelings, it's their feelings. And because your feelings and their feelings are similar, there's a very interesting thing that goes on there, isn't it? When you believe somebody is commiserating with you, you feel loved more. And therefore you feel like you can feel your feelings more. Right? The other problem is that you're not addressing your own resistance to feelings.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest issue, isn't it? We're using a tool to get over our resistance, and
some of your biggest work is going to be dealing with your resistance to feelings.
I understand the appeal. It appealed very much to me when I first remembered who I was, and I was like, oh, there's a shit ton of emotions for me to feel, and I don't want to feel any of them. What's a tool that could help me? You know, but experience has shown me, unless you deal with the resistance to feeling, every emotion is hard. Every emotion is a struggle to get to. You want to get to a point
where... Not only that, you don't get to the bottom of it. Ever. Because there's always the resistance stopping you from getting to the bottom of it.
If you think about it like a full surrender, you know, there's a feeling of like, oh no, feeling, get into a bit of it. But really the resistance, the battle against it is still within you. And so it's very hard to just let it all come out. So, and I think as you just said or about to say, the biggest work you do is getting rid of your resistance to humility, really. To really gaining that humility back in your soul is most of the work.
And can I also point out, by engaging in role play with other people about your feelings, you are now doing two things to those people. You are using their time for your own advantage. Now, does that sound to you to be a loving thing to do? Right? Does it sound to you that it would be loving for me to expect you to be involved in my feelings? Aren't my feelings my own, and aren't I personally totally responsible for them? So if I'm now involving you in a method of solving my feelings, am I being loving to you? Can you see I'm not? Love requires that I own and take full responsibility for my own feelings without involving you in them. That's what love requires. Right? Now, of course, if the conscience was open, you would know all this. So that also says that when you're doing this, the conscience isn't open. Now, this also then causes you to open the conscience less, because you become dependent on a process which you think is benefiting you, but actually not benefiting you. And you think it is, but it's not. But also you're being unloving while you're doing it. Now there's extra sins being accrued, which you're going to have to address at some point. Right? And it's all happening because you feel you can't handle it yourself, which God wants you to feel. He wants you to believe and understand you are the pinnacle of his creation. You can handle everything yourself. Every emotion. It doesn't mean you have to live an isolated life. It just means that anything within inside of you can handle. You can deal with it. God wants you to understand you can deal with it. Now, this is saying I need help of a group of people to deal with it. Out of harmony with God's truth. Can you see? God's saying, you can deal with it. You're saying, no, I can't. I need some help to deal with it. if someone's going to help you, the way they can help you is help you understand your own blockages to your own emotions.
Truth, yeah.
The reason why you don't feel your emotions is what needs to be discussed and dealt with.
Because if you didn't have any resistance to feeling your emotions, you wouldn't need help discovering them, because they'd just be happening, wouldn't they?
And
it's like a little kid is just having their feelings. They don't need you to say, oh, you're pretty sad right now and this is what it's about. Their feelings are instructing them. But it's when you get shut down and you've got all these reasons why you think it's good to be shut down, that's where the work is. That's where the truth is helpful. If someone says, hey, you're afraid of your feelings for these reasons or whatever. Yeah.
Now, what you're going to get in a mixture in the room is sometimes it's going to be the thoughts that the person has. Let's say I'm role-playing your dad. Well, I'm going to role-play partly upon my own understanding of my own dad. And then on top of that, which, by the way, often dads have the same injuries, so it might help you, who knows. And then other times I'll be role-playing, if I really get out of my body, I'll be having spirit come over me role-playing your dad. Now, that might not be your dad either. It just might be another person's dad who wants to be involved in the process. But none of you know what the hell is going on. And if you don't know what's going on, should you do it? It's like, logically, should you do it? It's like, oh yeah, I'm making an atomic bomb, but I don't know I am. Should I do it? Right? Obviously not. Understand what you're doing and the potential power of what you're doing and the potential pitfalls of what you're doing, then do it.
And be honest about what's going on, that we want help, we feel like we can't cope with our feelings, that spirits are running this show, at least that's more honest, isn't it? Yeah. But ask all you find, let's get into this. What are all your protestations to what we're saying?
Can you feel your protestations?
I can feel them. Yeah. So Emily.
It's just like the protestations you had about pets.
But it's all right. Let's get them out. Let's talk about it.
I was a family constellation facilitator in the past.
Yeah.
And today I was talking about this exactly because it just came to me two laws, because there are some laws that are applied to the systems, family systems, that I just saw that, wow, this is leading us directly to hell.
Yeah. What are the laws?
One is the law of hierarchy.
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 Yeah.
And it says that ancestors come before us, so we have to honor them. But God's love and God's hierarchy is about love, not about time.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. And also not about who came before you. Because if it was, I'd be stuffed. Like my whole, in the first century and now, I would be. My father in this life, my grandfather in this life, both of them were drunkards. One of them died by the time he was 56 from alcohol abuse. And in the first century, I had a father who was involved in the Pharisee Sanhedrin, a grandfather and a grandmother who basically didn't believe in God at all. So can you see, if you put some honour on that, how can you honour that? The main issue my father in the first century had with me is that he felt I dishonoured him constantly.
And one other law that I remember is the law of compensation.
Yep.
It is said that if someone does you wrong, you have to do a wrong, but just a little bit less. But so you have to intentionally do wrong.
What?
So what? That is directly to hell.
You have to at least act wrong.
Do you act it in the constellation, or you have to go out and do it?
No, in life. If someone does you wrong, to keep the balance of love.
But this might not be the version of constellation that you guys
It's Bert Hellinger. It's the father of family constellation, Bert Hellinger. Yeah, so he says that to keep the equilibrium of love, when someone does you wrong, you do a little bit less.
In other words, justice rather than love.
Yeah.
I do wrong, you do wrong.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because these guys haven't learnt that But can I say that the spirits who led this guy to create it are definitely interested in you guys doing it. So even though you didn't learn it, they're still going to be interested in prolonging it on earth. And if they still hold the same beliefs, they're going to be influencing what goes on.
Yeah. This is why you need to know where it comes from.
Yeah, you need truth. You need truth. Would someone mind turning on the AC?
Okay.
Who else?
You got over there.
Oh, yep. Over here.
And then Kevin over this side. Yep.
It's very common in family constellation session that the people get the problem, can be a disease, difficult in relationship, sexuality, whatever. By the difficult of deal with the emotion or identify, which is the conflict, internal conflict that is the source. Yeah.
Yeah.
And usually in the session, the person can be in contact with this, like expand the conscience, and after that, the client will deal with this. For instance, a person that asked, come after me with a difficult in her professional life. Her business not growing, although she was prepared for that. And in the family constellation set, I saw that her representative was hiding something. And I directly asked to her, what you are hiding? What's the secret? And she started to cry. And she said, well, I was abused sexually by my father, and I'm very ashamed for that. And then we could work this because she could never make a relationship about that. And then...
Yeah, now we need to stop the story.
Yep,
yeah.
because we heard enough. So there's a number of issues with what happened.
Yeah.
One, she never dealt with her desire to not be truthful about the thing. It was drawn out of her, the abuse. So it wasn't an engagement truly of her will to make a different choice to deal with this thing. Spirits helped you to identify that there was something she was holding back on. You drew it out of her, but that wasn't really her intention, her aspiration for it to come out. So you've actually helped her to avoid a resistance that she has within her that she didn't deal with. Even if she started to feel about the sexual abuse, she still has the resistance to being open about it.
Sure.
And even if her business life actually changed, she still hasn't fully dealt with the abuse, because if she had, she would be open to sharing it.
Now, can I say, remember earlier when we were talking to Sarah about her situation with her daughter? We said we didn't deny that there was an effect that seemingly looked positive.
Yeah.
And the same goes with this. We're not denying there's an effect that seemingly looks positive. But you're getting fooled, guys. It's not a permanent solution. It's not a permanent thing. These people will still have to deal with things, and the trouble is you're convincing them that they've dealt with them, and then they look like things are changing, but they haven't dealt with them to the point where God wants them to deal with them so that they're completely free of them. And by doing this, you're creating an illusion that something is dealt with when it actually isn't. Now, that is going to impact their life in the future to a large degree. So the problem with creating what seemingly is a cure right now, without it dealing with the actual cause, means that down the track somebody's going to have to deal with the cause and come back to that problem. It's not an efficient way to deal with your problems. When you deal with a problem, you want to deal with the problem so that the outcome is permanent. You don't ever have to come back to it. Now or in the spirit world, ever have to come back to it. Right?
So, yeah, can we illustrate this? Like, I've got problems, emotional problems inside of me that I've been aware but not awake to for 15 years. And I live with a pretty evolved guy, right? Now, he doesn't, how do you think he responds to that? Whenever it comes up, he reminds me, there's that issue you know about, there's that issue. So he tells me the truth. He doesn't support me in the emotional problem. You know, he doesn't meet any addiction to help me avoid it. He doesn't. But equally, he doesn't go, okay, darling, let's sit down.
Let's do a role play.
Let's get through it, you know. And he doesn't force me to get through. He doesn't say, like, you've got to get through this, or, you know, this is like, come on, you know, there's none of that, because he understands that unless my free will is involved, I will never actually deal with it. The truth, and this, like, yeah, it's...
Now, I'm saying to you guys, you can continue doing these things if you want to. You have free will. You're going to regret it later. But that's also something you'll learn in the process if you want to keep doing it. We're just saying to you what's going on. That's all. Right? So we don't sort of want to argue with you about it all.
No,
we're just presenting with you, to you, what's actually happening.
And I think that
you did ask.
You did ask, and probably regretting that very much right now. But I think it's a really good way to illustrate a lot of these points that we've been talking about with spirits, and also the principles of dealing with your sin. So if we see sin as something that's creating pain in our lives, God's way is for us to embrace our free will, to understand that issue, to awaken to it, and to desire to remove it. And anything else, if you think about it, is quite condescending. It's saying, oh, you need help. Oh, you can't really deal with it. What kind of a parent does that with their child? A loving parent says, you are strong enough to do this. You can do this. And I'm not going to make a shortcut or take anything away from you, because at the end of that day, you're going to feel less confident in your abilities than more. And this is a lot of issues that come with therapies. Does that make sense? And this is where, if you're going to be in a helping or healing kind of a profession, it's very important that you don't get condescending with the people that you're working with. They have the same capacity as everybody else.
Yeah. Frequently what we see is the persons facilitating these events are the least developed of all the people in the room. Right? And I need to say that to you direct, Miller, yeah, and as well, least developed from God's perspective in the room, right? And you're not, oftentimes there's too much arrogance to even see it, isn't it? Right? It's something we've talked to you about before, isn't it? So, and also you're not examining where these things came from and looked at the very people who teach them and how effective they are in their life, right? So we see a lot of people doing these kind of things, relying on a certain facilitator, but if you examine the facilitator's life, or you examine the life of the person teaching it, you go, their life's a big mess, actually, right? And the reason why is because the spirits who engage in these kind of avoidance techniques are actually connecting more and more to the person and then making their life experience worse as a result. And the person is getting fed addictions of power, or getting fed, you know, the whole thing where everybody honours them or respects them or thinks that they need them in order to progress. And the net result ends up being that the very person who's facilitating ends up being in this power dynamic that degrades their own condition further, to the extent that they often die in such very poor conditions. And we've seen this happening almost with every form of therapy that's gone on the planet, you know, for years and years and years, all these different programming techniques and all of these sort of kind of therapies, and then there's also a lot of psychological techniques that are being used. They're all degrading the condition of the people using them, as well as creating a fiction in the people who think they're benefited. Because there is no real change in the aspiration of the individual to be fully responsible for their own emotions and own life. Right? So this is a huge way in which we are dishonouring, in fact, free will in the individual. You know, just because a person says, I want to get out of this problem that I have, doesn't mean God waits until they have a sincere desire to do that. Just because a person wants to avoid pain, and remember, A lot of our physical problems are the result of the law. God's law. God's intention is that you get that physical problem. That's the law. And the reason why he has that law is when a certain thing of love is broken, that law is engaged. The law that God has set up has engaged. It's a perfect system. Anytime you try to negate the effect of the law without dealing with the cause as to why there's a problem, then you are actually working against God's law. And if you're teaching it to other people, you are actually teaching something that's against God's law. And if you're doing that, that's a spiritual sin that is one of the most extreme sins you can commit. There are people in the hells of the spirit world only because, that are in the place of murderers, by the way, that are only there because they taught the wrong thing to large numbers of people on earth to the people's detriment. And they did it because they wanted power and control over other people in some way or another, right? And they wanted power and control over their own feelings in some way or another. So you've got to be real careful about these kind of decisions and choices, right? That you're making. And why I notice is that most people are completely unaware of what's going on to their own detriment, right? So
is there a therapy that can be aligned to the God's principle?
God's love,
Right.
therapy.
God's truth.
God's truth, therapy.
It's all about the intentional aspiration behind the therapy. That's the simple answer. If the aspiration is aligned with God's laws, God's love, God's truth.
Let's define it as God. Faith. Love. Truth. Humility. God's therapy. For you. They're it. They are the most efficient, the most beneficial, and if you engage them, they'll have the most permanent success. Only permanent success.
And you don't need anybody else.
No, but you do. You might need help sometimes in the sense of somebody telling you the truth. You might need help sometimes in somebody saying some things to you that increases your faith. You might need help sometimes in seeing that you're not humble and you need to be. You might need help sometimes seeing the reasons why you're blocked to humility. Sometimes you need that help, right?
And being loved really helps.
Being loved really helps, right? So if you have those things, they can get you through everything, you know? 2,000 years ago, I didn't have, what did you call it? Constellation therapy. 2,000 years ago, I didn't have neuro-linguistic programming either, right? And do you think a person in the middle of Africa cares about constellation therapy or neuro-linguistic programming or whatever other therapy is being used? No, they are worried about their very day-to-day life and how to, survive, right? God's truth will help them as much as it helps you. All these other therapies, they don't help them at all. So that should already tell you that if it can't be applied equally, it must be false. You understand? There are so many ways in which these kind of things break the law, break God's laws. And the majority of us don't see it because we haven't been educated as to what are the qualities of faith, what are the qualities of truth, what are the qualities of love, what are the qualities of humility, what does it mean to have an aspiration, which is a part of faith, what does it mean to have passion and desire, a part of faith, what does it mean to be able to analyse my own soul condition, that's a part of humility. We don't understand the relationships to all of those things, and so we think we've got to get something else. I've got to do something else. All right? So I'm not saying don't get help. There are times when you need help. Everyone in the spirit world gets help, but they don't get help to feel. Nobody gets help to feel. Nobody. They wait until you want to feel, and then you get some help. Nobody gets help to push them into feeling, because to do so would be against the law of free will, right? Nobody gets pushed into it. You have to get to the stage where the desire is present, then you get help. And by the way, you only get help on the one thing that you had a desire for. Right. Nothing else. So if one time you had a desire, I've got a problem with my relationship, I want to sort that out, then somebody will come along and explain to you. As long as you've exercised that desire and you want that assistance, somebody will come along and explain to you what it is. Most of the time you guys are going to disagree with them because you don't want to do it, right? But you're asked, and then they'll tell you, and then you go through a process generally, it usually takes a few years, of disagreeing with them vehemently, like angrily disagreeing with them. No, I don't agree with that. That doesn't work. Why would that work? I don't want to do that. Blah, blah, blah. And then have a big meltdown, have a big spit, and you have your tantrum and everything else. And then you get to the point where maybe they're right. And maybe that's what I should do. And that is the most efficient process to actually make change. You've got to go through the anger and the resistance and the yelling and screaming about it and all getting upset, because that's a part of the resistance you have to doing it right now anyway.
And I tell you what, it helps you break down your facade, and all the things you want to think about yourself all get broken down in that process, because you can't go, oh, I'm all rosy and wonderful and together, You have to go through this process of going, actually I'm mad and I'm angry and I want to keep my sin, and what is this all about? And can it really be that? No, all of that helps you to become a more real person who feels more equal with everyone else, because you realise your poo stinks, and
just like everybody
else's does as well.
That's right. So you get to a point where in the spirit world, and this is what we want to replicate on earth if we want to progress the most efficient manner. What we want to do is replicate the fact a person says, I want some help. So you go to them and say, I think I might be able to help you. What the problem you're saying is that you've got a problem with, let's say Mary and I have a problem. She's doing all the work in our family, and I'm just sort of the man who lays back. I come home from work. I get to have the life of doing the work I love and coming home and getting a wife to love me, but she does all the hard things, like she pays all the bills, she does all of the laundry, she does all the cooking, cleaning, she looks after the kids and all those other things that I want, but I don't want to work that hard for them, right? So we recognise, or she recognises there's a problem. Somebody else a woman who's dealt with that problem would be the most ideal person to help her, wouldn't it? That would be because the woman has been through it all. She's been through changing that and then having to stand up and say, no, this is wrong, having the angry husband yell at her for a while, and while he's having a meltdown about the fact that his life's changing and he doesn't like it. Like, she's the one who's able to help Mary the most. I can't, because I'm the one who wants what she was giving before. I can't help her at all, really, can I? All I'm doing is hindering her progress. So she needs somebody who's going to be able to help her say, what do I do? Right? So Mary asks, what do I do? The person comes along and says, this is what you do. Mary goes, I don't want to do that. If I do that, my relationship will break down. I won't have the security in the house. Also my kids won't like me anymore if I change some things there. My husband won't like me anymore. That's all too much. Is there an easier solution? And the girl says, no. The woman helping her says, no easier solution. This is the most efficient way. And for a while, Mary might first go, surely there's an easier solution. I'll go and do some magical thing, let's call it, what do you call it? Constellation thing. That will work. I'll do some things that my husband doesn't know. So this man that I'm living with doesn't know I'm doing it, but I just did some constellation work. So he does some constellation work, and all of a sudden the man gets overcloaked by a spirit, and who knows what's going to change is going to happen now. You don't really know. And Mary's going, things are looking like they're changing. She hasn't had to do any major decisions, major choices.
I haven't had to have a proper conflict with you.
Haven't had to have the conflict.
Let's change the rapport in our relationship to be more a loving one.
Yeah. She's just doing these things, and I'm feeling pretty manipulated actually, as the man in the process. What is she doing now behind the scenes there? With this thing that she does with those other people. Like, I'm pretty suspicious right? Now, this is the net result of taking these kind of actions. Why wouldn't I be suspicious? She's doing it all behind closed doors because she doesn't want to have the out-and-out confrontation with me that will actually benefit me as well as her if we have it. Right? She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to be humble enough to do that, has enough faith in that to do that, has not enough faith in truth to do it with me. She wants to have some kind of magical thing that happens behind the scenes and all of a sudden I start changing. Right? Now, that's not good, is it? Can you see? Not good for me, not good for her. Now, if she is in that state and she wants some truth, a spirit can come along and say, this is what you need to do. And Mary had gone off and she's done that thing and she's gone off and tried another thing, gone off and tried another thing, but still she's doing all the work for me in the end of the day. She feels happier because she feels like she's doing something about it, but it's not the thing she needs to do. She needs to have a conflict with me. That's what she needs to do. She needs to, not a yell, scream conflict, but what you're doing is wrong. I can't do this anymore. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to do anything about it? Do you want to be sincere about doing something about it? Or do I just need to leave, I think, rather than put up with this anymore? This kind of a conflict, right? She doesn't want to have that. And I don't want her to have it either. Because I'm still getting what I want, right? So I don't want her to do any of that. So the problem now becomes this person, this good person who comes to help Mary and says, this is what I had to do. Mary's not listening to her anymore because she's looking for some magical solution to change her life that has nothing to do with what's actually going to change her life in the most efficient manner, right? And she's doing that, and so for a few years she'll do that, and it doesn't work. So what's she going to do then?
Try another therapy.
Try another one. Let's go off and find neuro-linguistic programming. Is that what they call it? NLP or whatever. Yeah. Let's try that. Let's try tapping. You know, that therapy. You know, let's try that. You know, I'm feeling agitated. You know, tap certain pressure points in my body and I calm myself down. Her situation in life is not changing, and I'm not changing. So that doesn't work. Now, if Mary's not careful, she's going to go through so many different forms of therapy or trying to change. She's going to go through so many of them because she doesn't want to accept the actual one that's going to work. She'll go through so many of them and get tired with all of them. So what does she do then? It's pointless. I'm just living with this for the rest of my life. I'll live with the mongrel for the rest of his life. Me being the mongrel, right? So, and she'll live with me for the rest of her life because she didn't want to deal with the actual things that would change us, right? Now, of course, I'm being completely unloving too, and that's never being confronted, right, by Mary doing all these other things but not looking at the relationship, right, and saying, there's a problem here, that's why I'm tired and distraught and feel unloved, and there's all these problems here, right, in this relationship. Nothing's getting addressed. Nothing's really getting addressed. Nothing benefits me because I'm still continuing my own behaviour. Nothing's benefiting Mary because she's exhausting herself in this process of trying to find out all these different therapies and all these different ideas and modalities and, you know, all these. And most men who watch their wives, by the way, do this. The majority of men who watch their wives do this go, what crazy thing are you in next? Right? That's how they feel. And you can understand why they feel that way, right? Because it is crazy. Most of it is. And it doesn't work. And so at the end of the day, there's a disrespect growing in the relationship. These are all the consequences of not doing the thing that was suggested at the beginning. But eventually, Mary will have a meltdown about all that, say it didn't work, whether it's in the spirit world or now. Eventually she'll have a meltdown, and the other person who came along to tell her can come along again and say, you know, Mary, you remember I said 25 years ago that you should do this? And Mary goes, well, I've tried everything else, all the things I would have preferred to work and didn't, so what do I do now? Maybe I should try that. But what's happened? She's wasted 25 years. And that's the penalty of not doing it God's way. You have the regret of wasting life. Yeah. Have we said enough? I think so. Yeah.
And obviously, if that person who came along to help you was your guide, you ignored them for 25 years too.
Because that's what, if you have a divine love guide, that's what they're saying to you. They're saying, deal with it properly. If you listen to God, what's God saying to you? Deal with it properly. Deal with it permanently. Deal with it my way, he's saying. My way is the best way. That's why we called this organisation in Australia God's Way, not AJ's way or Jesus' way or Mary's way. You know, and sometimes when some people in the organisation go, I want to do it my way, I said, this organisation is not called your way. It's called God's way. What is God's way? That's what we need to do. And your way doesn't and not going to work. God's way will. Have some trust in that. God knows better what to do. Yeah? Next question. We've got time for a couple more.
Ooh, we still do.
Yeah, maybe a minute or two on each.
How's everyone coping?
Let's keep going.
Kevin, is it a personal example or a question about?
No, I was just noticing that, you know, what is it that's similar to what I have never done the family constellations.
Yeah.
But what's similar to, so we all have almost like here a collective aspiration. So there's that comes together, like where we've been.
To have a
together.
group, there's a collective aspiration.
Yeah.
Like at this talk, you mean?
And then there's a collective soul condition.
Yeah, correct.
And then, as you say, there's, well, I'm not saying as you say, as I feel, as you say as well.
Yeah.
As you say, there could be hundreds of thousands or millions of spirits kind of around. But then the difference between what you're doing maybe and what something that's facilitated, where there's a hierarchy, is that you're saying you're almost helping us deconstruct
other hierarchies,
our false aspirations or our false soul conditions, and come into the 4 traits that you talk about, or something like that, right?
Yeah, and also our goal is not to be your leaders. Our goal is to be your educators.
Right.
Just like a spirit who would come to you asking for information. When you ask for information, he'll give you information. That's all we're trying to do. We've had 2,000 years of experience, and all of it with God. Right? So all God's way. Right? Now that should amount to something for anybody who values that. But obviously, if you don't value that, you're going to think it amounts to nothing. You know? But if it's worth investigating, then maybe it's worth applying in the proper way, in the proper manner, and then you can experiment with that and whether that works or not, right? What we see a lot of people doing, they're going, the proper way is too hard. You know, this whole thing of becoming aware of sin to awakening, that's all too hard. I want there to be some manner that examines the fault of my family and the fault of others as to why I feel what I feel. The whole family constellation thing is really saying, oh, your mum and dad did this and your mum and your dad did that, and that's why you have the problem you have, right? That's not true. The reason why you have the problem you have is because you believe things that are sinful on a spiritual level. That's the reason why we have the problems we have. You know, I've had similar problems than you, in the sense of similar upbringing from many of you. In the first century, my father was abusive, just like many of yours has been. In the first century, my mother was a nurturer, just like many of yours were. And I grew up with all those things, but I broke the paradigm of my family, not by doing work like family constellation work, but actually by listening to God and applying God's principles in my life, right? And understanding what my sin potentially would be if I did things wrong, right? I had to come to that conclusion in myself. If I change my sin, everything around me will change. The rewards of that, God's love can come to me. God's love removes any cause. So you know, when you focus on, let's have a discussion about my family and what happened there, God's love can do that work for you as long as you repent, as long as you understand the law and how it works. God's love can do all of that. So why do you need to do all of that? You don't need to do all of that. What you need to do is get from sin to repentance. But see, the average person goes, that's too hard. I don't want to even recognise that I sin. I want to think that it's all somebody else's sin that causes me to have these problems that I have. right? And it's not. It's not. It would be very vicious of God to visit illnesses upon you that have been caused by others, right? It's actually a belief inside of you that causes them, right? And also, if I have a focus that the only reason why I've got a relationship with God and the only reason why I'm listening to divine truth is because I'll cure myself, then you're pretty selfish. Because that's a very selfish thing to think. Like, wouldn't it be better that you learn how to love others, that you learn how to properly care for others, that you learn how to care for the environment? These are all things outside of yourself, as well as learn how to care for yourself. That would be good, wouldn't it? Not just care for yourself and then nothing else. So this is the focus. You know, God's principles are, God wants you to come to the conclusion that your life is not just about you. You know, it's about all the interactions and all the joys of those interactions you have with others. In the end, it's going to be about you and meeting your soulmate and having this relationship with God and a relationship with lots of other beautiful people who have done the same thing. This is what God wants you to experience. And He wants to help you overcome these little ant problems that are called your emotions, your injured emotions. Right? After a while, you'll start to see them as little ant problems as you deal with them. And you won't feel it when you're going through them. You'll feel it after you've gone through them. You know? But what most of us do, instead of we're going, I don't want to have to go through those tough emotions. I don't want to see my own sin. I want to believe the sin is always the sin of others. The whole family constellation thing is basically based on the premise that all your problems are the sins of others. Already a completely false premise. Right? And this is the problem with these kind of things. So what I love about God's truth is that it's real and raw and blunt and direct and straight in your face. Right? It's a good thing. Get used to it. You know? It's good that it's that way. Yeah? Yeah.
You mentioned blocks and resistance. Is there any advice you can give to help deal with that? Because if that's what's stopping us from getting to this, what can we do?
This weekend I've already given you that advice, but many of you didn't see it as very important. Remember I said make a list of all the emotions that you know, all the words describing emotions, and then try to connect yourself to what it means to feel them. That would be a good thing to do, wouldn't it? A very positive thing. Now, if you need a group of people to do that, get together and go, right, what do you think this feeling feels like? Because I got no idea. You know, like when I started the process, I had no idea what anything other than probably terror felt like. Right? So it took time for me to come to that conclusion. But you can do it by yourself, just with God. And one of the things that has benefited me a lot in my life is I've had no one helping me. And the reason why it's benefited me is I've come to rely on God the most. I rely on God more than any of you ever have and probably ever will. Right? I've had to, because I've done everything alone. You follow? Yeah. I've done everything without Mary, without family, doing it without friends. Eventually they followed, but everything was done alone. And when I say alone, not really alone. I had the greatest helper in the universe with me. Right? And that's what I would like for you. If you have the greatest helper in the universe helping you, you're going to find you develop self-confidence. You will understand yourself better. You'll come to feel very confident you can handle anything by yourself. And if you have friendships, you'll think that's fantastic, but you won't need them. Right? If you have people who you love, you'll think that's fantastic, but you won't need them to do it with you anymore. Because if you want to progress, at some point somebody else is going to say, I don't want to progress as fast as you. And what are you going to do then? If you're reliant on them, what are you going to do? Wouldn't it be better to go, I want to progress, I want to do it for myself, I want to progress as fast as I possibly can, I want to be as happy as I can as soon as I can. Fundamentally, that's the decision you're going to need to make. I want to be as happy as I can, as most economically as I can. In other words, I want to go through the least amount of trauma becoming happy. Right? God's way is the least amount of trauma to become happy. You follow? Yeah. So if you do that, then you'll have a lot of confidence in yourself. You'll feel yourself to be the pinnacle of God's creation. Fact. You are. You'll feel that, right? You'll also get to the point, if you do it with God, that you'll feel yourself to be immortal, unable to die, unable to ever be destroyed in any way, because a part of God's love is in you. And for God or something to destroy you, they'd have to destroy God as well. You'll get to that stage where you feel that level of confidence, and not arrogance, but confidence in God and the relationship you have with God. And that's what we're hoping for you see. Yeah. But all these other things, they don't lead you there. They are part of this broad road that might lead you to the perfect natural man, but not to a state of bliss with God. Yeah? Not to that. Now, we've had 1,000 years experience with that. You can trust us or not. You can try the other way if you want for a while and see how it goes. We're happy if you do that. That's your will. Yeah? Is there any other questions?
It's so hard to come in after that, isn't it? You're like, also, some ways to deal with resistance.
Now, if any of you need to leave, if any of you need to leave, I know we said we're finishing at 4 and it's 4. So if any of you need to leave, feel free to leave. We're okay.
Good
to meet you guys.
Yeah,
and so feel comfortable to do that. All right. Do we go further?
Yeah. All night.
What was the next question?
Well, I think the one to answer is, how much does my sin help or harm, or how do I help or harm the spirits around me, and how does that relate to my sin? Is probably the question.
Yeah.
Now, can I rub some of this off so that you've got a bit of space?
So we're focused on
we
this.
Just got those
we want the aspirations.
And this things up.
Yeah. God's way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see so far in the discussion about rapport that there are a lot of factors drawing a spirit to you, isn't there? Okay? A lot of reasons why a certain type of spirit might come into your life, and fundamentally it revolves around the two things that we've left on the board, right? The aspirations you have for your future and your current condition. Fundamentally it revolves around those things. With your current condition meaning all the principles that you either live in harmony with or without, and also all your memories and your belief systems and all that. There's a part of your current condition. Your experience in life, you could call all that, couldn't you? Your experience up until now, and what you've done with that from a love perspective, a moral perspective, determines your condition.
And we haven't really talked much about beliefs, but beliefs, whether those beliefs are based on truth or error, has a large bearing on your condition.
Huge effect. Yeah. Huge effect. So an example of that is, a person who loves me helps me with my emotion. That's a false belief. But most of us have grown up in this world thinking it's a true one. Right? So that emotion, a person who loves me is going to help me with my feelings. Can you see what that's going to draw to me spirit-wise? It's going to draw spirits to me who believe they love you, helping you with your feelings. Helping you experience feelings. Now, they might not feel like they're helping you God's way. They might go, I'm going to help you to get rid of them, or by denying them. I can help you do that. I can help you. If you just do these things and that thing and this thing and eat those foods and do this meditation and that yoga and this thing, you will get to a stage where you're nice and calm when inside there's a raging terror in you. Right? But if you do all of those things, you'll eventually become calm. And you know, if you do those things, eventually you will become calm. Eventually. It might take a few hundred years or whatever, but eventually it will happen. But you still will not be at one with God. So at the end of the day, done right, you do all of these things on the natural love path, any of the things, remember there's a broad way of those things. There's like thousands of things you could do that are going to improve your life on the natural love path. None of them are going to lead you to a relationship with God. Right? The things we've been discussing the last 3 days are going to, but not these other things. Right? Now, the more I get involved in these other things, can you see, the more I am going to be distracted from doing the very thing that is going to benefit me the most. Right? So that's the thing to remember with a lot of interactions with spirits. I need to be able to determine the bona fides of a spirit who's with me. I need to be able to determine a number of things. I need to be able to determine their intention, their motive that they have with me. If I can't determine that, I must assume that they're untrustworthy until I can determine that. Just like you would meeting a person. That's exactly what you've done with me. Most of you heard me first and you go, can't trust him. Right? And it wasn't until my intention and my motivation was displayed to you over many years sometimes that you've come to even trust anything I say. And for many of you, you wouldn't even be here if that hadn't happened. Can you see that? So why aren't you applying the same rule that you've applied to me with the people that you can't see? Can you see? Oftentimes it's because I want magical solutions somehow with the spirits. I want some, amazing, wonderful thing to happen. They're just people you can't see. You think about the average person on earth, if you could paint them invisible, what would they do? I'm a thief. Paint me invisible? What do you reckon I'm doing? I'm going to be all of a sudden very nice and righteous, aren't I? And never thieve anything from you ever. Is that how it is? If you could paint me invisible and I'm a thief, what do you think I'm doing? I'm thieving more. Because I can get away with it, right? So you paint me invisible and I'm a pedophile. What do? I've got opportunities. People can't even see me doing it. I've got opportunities that I didn't have before. Right? If my intentions are evil and you paint me invisible, then I'm going to engage those evil intentions more than I did when I was on earth. Not less. Right? Until I change, that's going to be the case. Now, you've got to bear that in mind when you're dealing with people who are invisible. You can't trust all of them without assessing condition and aspiration, their motive and intent. That's all to do with their aspirations, isn't it? What is their intent with you? What is their motivation with you? Why are they doing what they're doing? That's what needs to be determined the most. Follow? And you just keep reminding yourself, you paint somebody invisible, what are they going to do? If their intent and motive is evil, then obviously they're going to do more evil. If their intent and motion is to look good, then they're going to do more things that make them look good. Right? And you might be fooled unless you can feel their true condition and their aspiration. Or even better, it'd be good that you could just ask God, wouldn't it? What's their intent God will share that with you. He's happy to share the lives of anybody with you. He's happy to say, Joe Blow down the road, his intent is this. This person over here, his intent is that. He's happy to tell you these things. As long as you have a good connection with him, you can listen. It's interesting because a lot of people come to us and they say, oh, I really believe you, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene, and I've been listening to you for years, and often they go away, and I say to Mary, within a week of them hearing any personal truth, they're going to be not only like not listening anymore, they're going to be attacking us on the net as soon as that happens. Because you can feel the intent and motive of the individual who comes with you with that. Now, that's a good thing to know. Now, sure enough, as soon as they ask us a personal truth, we share it with them, because anybody who asks, we try to share, right? Because they're asking, it's their free will, so we share. And sure enough, that thing happens. But I already know it's going to happen, because the intent and motive of the person is blatantly obvious to God. And He can help you with that. Right? And if you are armed with that from a spirit perspective, can you see it's going to help you iron out every spirit who comes along, what their intention is, whether that intention is good or bad, or whether it's not good or bad, but in this middle grey area where they think they're doing good, but actually they're not knowing or understanding the full ramifications of their choices and decisions, just like many of you are thinking you're doing good, not understanding the full ramifications of your decisions, right? And God can share all that with you, which is fantastic, by the way, because it gives you information that helps your life. Yeah? You just got to be brave enough to engage God's way to get to the stage where that can be shared with you. Yeah. So, there's a few questions that we can answer quickly in that list, I think.
Well, so you don't want to answer the one that I just said? That's too long, hey?
Which one's that?
How do I help or harm the spirits around me?
It's the same way they help or harm you. We've just discussed how they help or they harm you. You help or harm them the same way.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same way.
Yeah.
You remember they're people. And so if you enter an addiction with them, you're harming them. If you enter issue of power with them, you're harming them. If you do what an evil person would do with them, you're harming them. If you make them
if you're passive and do exactly what they say,
do whatever they say, you're harming them. It's exactly the same as it would be with a person. Right? There's nothing unique about the spirit world except that you can't see them. Nothing else. Pretty much most people when they pass are exactly the same person they were on earth, but they're invisible to people on earth. That's it. That's the only change. Many of them don't even know they've died. Right? Many of them don't know they've died for years until they know that they've died. Just assume they're a person. How do you help a person? You don't feed their addiction. You don't enter unloving contracts with them. You encourage them towards faith, love, humility, and truth. That's how you help them. That's how you can be helped. That's how you help them. Exactly the same way.
I actually think it wouldn't be this, we need to go to gender confusion because we've covered all the other hot issues this weekend. This is another very hot issue.
Yeah.
This is the one to watch for everyone to get challenged on all the major societal issues. Let's talk about it.
When you're hot, you're hot.
Yeah.
We're
Canadians so open, we're allowed to say everything.
You can see that, let's say I'm a spirit and I've lived a life on earth that's been very unsatisfactory, right? And in the process of living that life on earth or in the spirit world, I realise I can overcloak somebody right from the point of time where they're actually in the womb. If the mother lets me, I can actually overcloak somebody while they're in the womb and start to confuse their development, their thoughts, their feelings.
I can do that at any point in their childhood, actually.
I can do it at any point
and
in their
around
childhood.
puberty as well, depending on what is going on in that family and in that child at that time.
Yep, and most people on earth don't believe in spirits, so I'm invisible to them. They don't understand the effect of that, so I'm invisible to them. They don't understand that a lot of my influence that I can bring to bear by dropping thoughts and feelings into a person, they don't understand that I can do all of that, but I do now. So what do I do? So let's say I'm a person who likes to see two women having sex with each other. Right? That sexually turns me on, let's say. So here I am, I'm in the spirit world, so I'm a spirit. And I like to see, what do you call it? Should we call it lesbian sex? Let's say that's what I like. Right? But I would like to be involved in it some way. Right? And how do I achieve that is the question. How do I as a spirit achieve that? I can't have sex where I am in the spirit world because basically in the hells it's impossible almost to have sex at all due to different constraints that are placed upon the person in the hells. Impossible to do it there. So what do I do? So on earth there's all these little children around who have no resistance to me overcloaking them in some way or another because their family has never taught them about spirits. The families have never taught them about about themselves and who they are. The family has never done any real work with regard to the basics, with regard to God's truth about things. The family's done none of that. So there's no protection for the child. And I'm realising this as a spirit. And I've got some malicious intentions. I want to live my life again on earth, but let's do it this time. I'm a man, but let's do it as a woman, using a woman's body. What do I do? I overcloak a girl, right? Now, in the process of overcloaking the girl, if that girl doesn't have a good exercise of her will, she's going to start thinking she's me. A boy, a man. She's going to start thinking that. So what happens now? If she thinks that a lot, she'll start wondering, like, her attractions are to girls. So I've determined that her attraction is to a girl. But she's seeing it through a man's feelings, me. My man feelings are being projected through her. So she's a girl, and I want to be connected to her body because I want to experience sex with a woman through the body of a woman. Is my motivation. So here's another girl. But I'm now connecting to this person and connecting to her more and more and more and more and more to the point where eventually she starts thinking that she's in the wrong body.
And like this can happen for any reason. It's not just because I've got a malicious sexual intent. It could just be I believe in reincarnation.
It could be that.
I think it doesn't matter it doesn't matter if I influence this girl into thinking that she's a boy. I don't recognise the implications of overcloaking a girl if I'm a boy. It can happen for a lot of reasons. It can happen because I'm angry at the parents. The parents wanted a boy, and so I think I'm doing them a service. There's a lot of rationalisations this spirit could have.
My rationalisations, there could be literally hundreds of them, right? Yeah. Of different rationalisations of what might cause me to do that as a spirit. So I do it. The stronger the bond becomes, the more this girl is going to start feeling she's a boy. Right? Now, if this has happened before puberty, during puberty, I'm going to influence, as a spirit, I'm going to influence every one of her feelings towards girls, even if she's not truly attracted to girls in her own soul. I'll be influencing her to feel attracted to girls, feel attracted to girls, feel attracted to girls. And also, I'm a boy attracted to girls. I'm really in the wrong body now, attracted to girls. Right?
Another time this can happen is if this girl reaches puberty and she's like, this sucks being a girl, I hate it, mum hates it, everybody hates it, it would be better if I was a boy, and then the spirit can connect to her then. It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be right from the beginning, it can be during puberty. Right, so now the girl is thinking, I should be a boy, I should be in a boy's body. So what is she going to contemplate doing? In the world now, there's medical procedures you can undertake and there's hormones you can take to try to force that to occur. Right? And in the process of doing that, she's mutilating her own body in order to become that person. Right? How's that going to feel for her in the future? It's going to be very difficult for her in the future. There are many who have done it, by the way, who are now going through the process of realising they did the wrong thing. Right? And because the spirit influence has died away, and often it happens when the spirit feels, oh, this body's not attractive enough, or this body's not nice enough for me to be with it anymore, it's too old now, it's out of shape now, so the spirit leaves and finds another girl who's got more attractive body or whatever, right? And then the person is then left with their own feelings after that, to their own distress, because then they realise, oh, something happened when I was during this time of my life, something happened that caused me to change my entire, like even to get my body cut up medically, something happened to cause it, and now I feel it was the wrong thing to do. Right? Now, if they don't feel it's the wrong thing to do on earth, they certainly will when they pass, because when they pass, the very first thing they'll do when they look down at themselves is see they have the woman's body.
So our question was, what if I'm this person who's heard this, I believe what Jesus and I have just said. The question was, how do I lovingly, in harmony with love and truth and humility and faith, deal with this girl? Do I deal with the spirit? Do I deal with her? And what should I do?
Every problem is solved by education. Right? So first point of education is, we educate the spirit about what he's doing. If that's not possible, we also educate the person on earth about what they're doing, about what they're contemplating doing. Educate them properly. Right?
Now, what if they don't want to know?
Well, it's free will now, isn't it? If they don't want to know, then there's little else we can do. However, we can try to disconnect that spirit from the person, can't we? We can try to get that spirit to leave that person. Now, there's a number of ways you can do that. If you actually have faith that's strong enough, you can just pray to God to take the spirit away and the spirit will go. Just as simple as that. And then the person will be left by themselves without the spirit. However, if the person has a desire, then they'll just attract another spirit, won't they? So for it to work permanently, there needs to be two things happening. Firstly, the spirit can be removed easily enough, but the person needs to be educated about what draws that spirit to them. Now that is going to be dependent upon the will of the person. And there's not much you can do except, if they don't want to know, is to pray for them to go through an experience so they become aware of what's going on. Right? There's little else that can be done because they don't want it. And you can pray for them to develop their will so that they want to know before they do the procedure, preferably, because they're going to regret the procedure afterwards at some point. Right?
Now, at some points over the weekend, we've been talking to some of you about this idea when you change your name. Some of you have been adults and then you've taken on a new name.
Yeah.
It's
similar thing is happening to you.
It's a similar thing happening. You want to avoid something, and so you attract
from
someone.
your childhood, generally.
Yeah. Who comes along to sort of bolster you in some way in that avoidance.
And this spirit
They might think they're doing a loving thing, helping your spiritual path or what have you, but be aware that there's a similar dynamic going on But often if you're an adult, you have developed some awareness of your own self and your own will.
Yep.
Even if you want to avoid large chunks of yourself in your life, you have enough awareness of self that you won't, say the gender is different, now start feeling like you should be another gender. Although we have seen that happen as well. But another thing from this weekend, we talked about parenting, and this permissive kind of parenting that's going on Earth is actually, this is why this problem is heightening now. So it's not just people who want to avoid terrible pasts. It's because from a parent perspective, there is absolutely no protection of the child because there is no law whatsoever. And the child is not experiencing something that is not very well understood perhaps, is that law and your engagement with law helps you gain a sense of self. So when you jump off a building and it hurts, you go, oh, I shouldn't jump that high. The law told me that. If I get in a relationship and it hurts, oh, maybe there's something I've got to change there. When I break a law, there's a consequence. This helps me understand I'm a being interacting with a law. When there is no law in parenting, the child is not engaging in that process. So we talked about how spirits can influence kids in terms of just overcloaking them to have pleasurable experiences like, I don't know, wrecking the house or jumping on the bed or whatever in a kind of rebellious attitude. But it's also, this is why this problem is happening more and more now, because spirits are opportunistic and this child has no sense of themselves because there is no law reflecting anything back to them. They're just like a product of demand and desire that has no response. And so they don't really know themselves very well. And this is how spirits can convince them, oh no, you're me. So, yeah. A lot of themes.
And a number of you have had that experience, right, where you've wanted to avoid some childhood issues, tough childhood emotions usually, and then somebody comes along and suggests you change your name, not understanding that actually oftentimes there's a spirit of that name who now is with you constantly, and by changing your name to be their name, you're actually developing a stronger rapport with that spirit.
Lessening your own
sense of self. Yeah.
And for kids,
And for kids that's very distracting because they haven't developed properly yet to even know the difference about themselves and the other person or anything like that. So, and particularly for a child who's under 7, it's particularly problematic because they've yet to even have a developed brain to be able to determine differentials and stuff like that. And so it's very problematic when this occurs between the ages of being born or in the womb through to the age of 7. Yeah. The problem is this is not well known or understood on Earth. It's not even understood by people who are mediums or anything, right? And so the mediums almost encourage it as well. Like, oh, you've really got a different name. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't it fantastic you've got a different name? I'll name you the different name. You come away from me and go, yeah, that feels good. Feels right for me. I'll take on that name. Not understanding the medium just facilitated the spirit to be closer bond with you without you really even knowing who that or what that spirit's intention is. Yeah. So the amount of very poor information available on Earth about the spirit world and spirit's intentions is causing more and more and more of these problems. And then, of course, there's a growing feeling on Earth that reincarnation is true, which is causing more and more and more of these problems. And then you have, in addition to that, a growing feeling in the spirit world and the hells that spirits want to avoid their feelings. And the way they get to avoid their feelings is by living their life again through you. And so they want to avoid their problems and you want to avoid your problems, and so you accept them coming to you and living the life like living the life like they think you should. Right? And all of these problems are caused because there's not enough information, truthful information about what is going on. Right? And once you understand what's going on, it's fascinating because you can see exactly. And after a while, you become so sensitive that you can actually feel, that's the name of that spirit, this is what he's doing to you, this is what's happening here, this is how he's been guiding your life. You can feel all of that, but it's going to require sensitizing to yourself
Your own
in order to understand and be sensitive enough to feel somebody else. See, if you're shutting down a whole heap of things inside of yourself, then of course you're incapable of feeling somebody else. So if I'm shutting down grief in myself, then I can't feel Mary's grief. If I'm shutting down anger in myself, I can't feel Mary's anger. If I can shut down like shame in myself, I can't feel Mary's shame. And the more I shut down in myself, the less I can feel of someone else. The more, conversely, the more I open myself, the more I can feel somebody else. To the point where they won't even have to tell you or describe to you any feeling at all, because you'll know it as soon as you meet them. Right? You'll be able to feel them. You'll be able to feel their feelings. Feelings are like a big, or what people call aura, oftentimes is feelings coming out of the person that are invisible but easy to feel. Right? And you can feel them. You can feel them coming at you. You know, this has happened. This has happened in your childhood. That's what's going on there. Mary doesn't tell me her feelings. Sometimes I say, I might ask her feelings so that she understands her own feelings. Right? She doesn't need to tell me them. It's true, isn't it? But,
yeah.
like I know what they are. Right? And in any situation, doesn't matter, like, we can be driving along in a car and Mary's in the back seat, I can't see her, she's talking to somebody else, I know what she's feeling. Right? We can be having sex, I know what she's feeling. Sometimes it's confronting, like, get lost or whatever. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Because the feelings are the real thing, right? The feelings are how a person feels is their will. So if I feel from Mary, don't be around me, then I don't be around her. If I feel from Mary she wants to have a chat, I'll go and have a chat. Make sense? And that requires, once you've got sensitivity here, you can feel everybody around you, including anybody unseen. And that's the benefit of doing it. It's fantastic because it's been, not only do you know what's going on around you on Earth, but you know why a lot of it is happening as well. Yeah, what who's there? What was going on? So, an example was on Friday. When the lady up in the chair up there, she's not here today or yesterday, but she asked about her indigenous history, and she didn't really ask. She was telling me how wrong I was about everything. But I could feel the spirits with her and who they were. And to be honest, they came and visited me 2 nights since as well, because they had a bit of an argument with me that they wanted to continue, right? And so they came along 2 days later and continued the argument. It was at 2 o'clock in the morning, which wasn't very convenient for me, but that's the way it goes. And we had the discussion again to the point where, they're not bothering me today. But they were distressed about what I was teaching, which is the reason why they felt so upset with me. But you can feel them and talk to them, and things can change when you know. It's so good. Rather than sort of not be aware and then go, well, that felt pretty uncomfortable, and like, what do I do with that? You know what's going on, and you can, when you're more informed, it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think when we talk about spirits, a lot of people initially feel, it's so creepy,
Worried.
and especially if they've never heard anything from us before.
Yeah.
But actually, it is, as you say, very good to know about.
Yeah, wonderful.
And it's not as mysterious as most of the world would have you believe. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it at that, eh? I'm pretty tired now, and I'm sure you are.
Wonderful.
It's been great to have a chat with you because of the engagement and the level of engagement. Many of you felt very there, even though you might have your doubts and your issues and challenges and everything, still, listening, participating. that's made it a very good group to teach, and that's one reason why I've gone overtime every day. You know, when you have a group like that, it's a lot easier to spend time with you and less draining, less exhausting.
Yeah.
And we need to say though that Mary and I will need to pack up tonight, and we've got gear that we need to pack up into different things. There's not a lot of ways you can help us with the technology because we need to unpack it the next time we go somewhere else. But there are some things that Mary wants to mention to you that you can do to help us before you leave tonight, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. You're not obliged to, but what you are sitting on, but can I just say before we do that, I just wanted to say it's been lovely to meet so many of you, and to see some of you that we've met before. It's just been lovely. Now, in terms of the pack up, you are sitting probably on a cushion and you probably have something behind you. I was thinking it would be good if we could put all of those things in a pile. They've come from different origins, haven't they, ladies?
Yeah, so there's going to need to be a sorting process.
Yes. Do you want them left where they are and you grab them from where? Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. All right, there's nothing you can do.
There are some chairs that have been brought here, haven't they? I think they're the dark coloured.
Yeah, but it might just get a bit messy if we're leaving the other stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think there's a team of people.
Those of you who own the backrest and the
they'll sort it out.
Chairs, you'll sort that out. Is that the way to go?
Yeah.
Aside from that, the toilets could be cleaned if somebody was.
And the floor could be swept.
And the floor could be swept. We like to leave our venues better than we found them. So.
But Anna, you're kind of in charge of that. Do you have enough people to help with that, or would you like some other volunteers?
No, I think we have enough, and also to do the floor would be better once the chairs are away.
Yes.
True, yeah, we'll pack the chairs away.
Do that.
But Mary and I will have to unpack a fair few things before we can put the chairs away, so we've put stuff in there.
Toilets, and please just pick up any personal belongings, any rubbish that you will litter.
Make sure you take everything you own with you, because we're not going to be able to come back in here and get it for you.
Thank you to everyone who's microphone us.